Chair Asefa, I believe we're ready to begin the meeting.
Great. Thank you, Justin. Good afternoon, everyone. I will now call this meeting of the California Strategic Growth Council to order. Justine Messi, Special Projects Analyst, will lead the roll call. Justine?
All right. Director Asefa.
Here.
Vice Chair Frank Cardenas.
Virtually here.
Secretary Moss.
Present.
Secretary Johnson.
Here.
Deputy Secretary Jameson.
Here.
Deputy Secretary Eisent.
Here.
Senior Housing Policy Coordinator Jackson.
Here.
Public Member Capretz.
Here.
And Deputy Secretary Schwartz.
Here.
All right. We're present and we have a quorum.
Great. Justin will now share today's public comment procedures, and then we'll move on.
All right. And bear with me, everyone. There's a lot of content here. So thank you, Chair, and thanks to everyone joining us today in person, online, or by phone through the Zoom webinar platform, or where the meeting is being live streamed on SGC's YouTube channel and Cali PA's live webcast. I'll provide some information to help guide us through the processes for this hybrid meeting, which have been designed with the intention of maximizing access by members of the public. For those joining the webinar online via Zoom or by phone, please note that your microphone is automatically muted when you join. In order to minimize the risk of background noise, you will not be able to unmute your phone yourself. For those joining online via Zoom, please note that the webinar platform does not enable video for attendees, so we will not be able to see you. If you need technical assistance during the meeting or have a question about the meeting process, there are a few ways to contact us. On the online Zoom webinar, the best way is by using the Q&A function. Several members of the SGC team are monitoring the Zoom function to facilitate public access to the council meeting and may remove disruptive or threatening content. If you have joined by phone and you have access to email, please email sgc.info@sgc.ca.gov. If you do not have access to email, you may text or call 916-324-9775. So that's if you need to get in contact with us. If you plan to make in-person public comment, you must fill out a comment card provided at the table to the back and side of the room. Please fill out the public comment card to indicate your name and which item you'd like to comment on. You will bring your comment card to the table at the side of the room where they're collecting them. And when the chair opens the public comment period for your item, we will read the names of everyone who has submitted a form for that item. When the names have been read, please line up by the podium here in the center of the room in the order in which you were called. When it's your turn to speak, I will call your name to the podium. If you plan to make remote public comment, you must be joining the meeting via Zoom, either through your desktop or phone app or by calling in by phone. So to make a public comment, visit sgc.ca.gov/meetings-events/council. You can see that on the screen here as well, and complete the public comment form linked there. You will need to complete separate forms for each item on which you wish to speak, and you may complete a form at any time prior to the beginning of the public comment period for each item. When the chair opens public comment for your item, we will read the names of everyone who has submitted a form for the item. When you hear your name in that list, please raise your hand. To do this online in the Zoom webinar, click Raise Hand under the Participants menu, which you can find at the bottom of your screen. To raise your hand by phone, press *9, and then when prompted, you can unmute by pressing *6. When it is your turn to speak, a member of our team will unmute your microphone. If you're online, you'll see a window pop up alerting you that the host is unmuting you, and you will need to click the option to approve unmute. After that, you can begin your comment. If you're on the phone, you will hear a recorded message alerting you that your line is unmuted. Please begin your comment after you hear the recorded message, and if necessary, press *6 to unmute. If you are unable for some reason to complete the online form but would like to make a public comment, you can email sgc.info@sgc.ca.gov. All right, last point here. Each speaker will have a maximum of 2 minutes to make their remarks, and a timer will be screen shared. Please monitor the timer and wrap up your remarks accordingly. Whether you are online or on the phone, you will be notified when your time is up. After that, we will mute your microphone. You do not need to take any additional action once we mute your microphone. Thank you all for your participation, and I will hand it back to you, Chair.
Thanks, Justin. We'll now move to item 3, which is the approval of the December 10, 2025 meeting minutes. Members need not have attended these meetings to vote on the minutes adoption, but may abstain. We'll have an opportunity for council discussion, then followed by public comments. Justin?
So this reminder is a lot shorter. If members of the public would like to comment on this item, please submit a public comment card at the table. And to make virtual public comment, please visit sgc.ca.gov/meetings-events/council and complete the public comment form.
Great, thanks. Any questions or comments from council on the minutes? No? Any public comments? Anyone signed up?
I'm not seeing any. Thank you.
Seeing none, is there a motion and a second to approve the December 10, 2025 meeting minutes?
A motion to approve?
Motion
Second.
by Secretary Johnson, second by Secretary Moss. Roll call.
Excuse me. Director Acefa,
Yes.
Vice Chair Cardenas. We'll circle back.
Screen.
Secretary Moss,
Aye.
Secretary Johnson,
Aye.
Deputy Secretary Jameson,
Aye.
Deputy Secretary Eisent. Aye. Senior Housing Policy Coordinator Jackson,
Aye.
Public Member Capretz,
Aye.
and Deputy Secretary Schwartz,
Aye.
and Vice Chair Cardenas.
Aye.
All right, approved.
Great. So moving on to the next item, I would like to introduce our next action, which is the council chair and vice chair elections. I will pass it back to Justin to introduce the item.
And the introduction here is simple, Chair. By statute, we're required to vote on the chair and vice chair every 2 years. So the time has come for us to take this vote. You'll have the opportunity to nominate, and then the council will take their vote.
Great. I'll just start the conversation. Are there any questions or comments, or do we have a motion to nominate a chair and vice chair? Council.
I appreciate greatly the leadership of the current chair and vice chair and think they're doing a stellar job and therefore nominate them to continue in these roles.
And I second that.
I'm not sure I agree with that, but
Noted. All right, great. We can take a roll call vote on the motion. So to continue for the next 2 years with the current chair and vice chair, Director Acefa, your vote?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Aye, you accept.
That's it.
Vice Chair Cardenas?
Honored. Thank you. Yes.
All right. Secretary Moss?
With alacrity.
Secretary Johnson?
Aye.
Deputy Secretary Jameson?
Yes.
Deputy Secretary Eisent? Aye. Aye. Senior Housing Policy Coordinator Jackson?
Aye.
And Public Member Capretz?
Yes.
And Deputy Secretary Schwartz?
Aye.
All right, the motion passes. Oh, I'm seeing a note. My apologies. We should have asked for public comment, but I've also been informed that there is no public comment, so we are in the clear here.
Okay, before I move to the next one, actually, I second Secretary Johnson's remarks about the Vice Chair Cardenas. He has been an incredible partner and an incredibly effective member of the council. But I just want to say thank you, um, to my vice chair here. With that, we will move to the next item, which is introducing Executive Director Aaron Curtis to present item 5, which is the Executive Director's report. Following her presentation, we'll have the opportunity for council discussion, then public comments. So, Aaron?
Thank you, newly elected Chair Asafa. And I will just say that I am very happy to continue working with our chair and vice chair and this entire council. Thank you. It's an honor to be here once again, and I am going to walk you through the executive director's report, bring you up to speed on activities of the council and our staff over just the last couple of months. Let's see, do we have the first slide? We do. All right. So just in the first 2 months, we've been very busy. Our staff has celebrated 2 grand openings of transit-oriented affordable housing developments, one in Watts and one in San Jose. We also celebrated the opening of the first Community Resilience Center funded through our CRC program in Santa Rosa, which was a very exciting milestone as well. You'll hear more about it. We also launched a new initiative to support tribal housing projects. We opened the application period for round 3 of the Factory-Built Housing Regional Pilot Program. We finalized round 10 guidelines for the Affordable Housing and Sustainable Communities Program for the council's consideration today. And we supported tree planting at Stockton City Parks in response to some storm damage there through our Transformative Climate Communities Program, and a whole lot more. That's just a little flavor of what we've been busy doing, and some real tangible impacts of how the Strategic Growth Council is supporting thriving communities statewide. And that's something that I think it's important for you all to take pride in, along with our staff and your staff and all of our partners and communities. So I'm just going to get a little bit more into detail about some of these milestones that we've been able to reach. So the next slide will focus on the Jordan Downs redevelopment project. This month, our chair joined LA Mayor Karen Bass and several community partners to celebrate the grand opening of Cypress View. This is a new affordable housing project and a major milestone in the ongoing $1 billion redevelopment of Jordan Downs, the public housing complex in Watts near LA. Cypress View features 119 new apartment homes ranging up to 5 bedrooms in size and includes about exactly 107 units set aside for families earning 30 to 80% of the area median income. And 20 units are also reserved specifically for previous Jordan Downs residents. As you know, that project is very focused on ensuring that folks are not displaced during the redevelopment. The project also includes transportation improvements, a workforce development training program, community rooms, in-unit and shared laundry facilities, and landscaped outdoor courtyards with barbecue grills to continue to have the atmosphere that Jordan Downs is used to. And with the support of state investments, including from SGC's Transformative Climate Communities and ASIC, Watts residents helped shape more than just new housing in the area. They shaped safer streets, access to parks and transit, a new shopping center, and much needed grocery store, skills building programs, and a neighborhood families can take pride in. SGC specifically has supported the Jordan Downs redevelopment effort through a total of 6 awards from ASIC and the TCC programs for a total of $112 million in grant funding just from this council. This is an incredible neighborhood transformation, and it shows what happens when we invest in people, honoring their voice and building a healthier, more connected neighborhood for generations. I was really honored and glad that you were able to attend that event, Chair. Next slide, please. I recently had the opportunity to hop on the train from Sacramento. I almost missed it. Definitely almost missed it. But I was able to join partners in San Jose for the grand opening of the Tamian Station Apartments. That's a new affordable housing community just steps from convenient public transit and everyday needs, built on a former Santa Clara Valley Transportation Authority parking lot. And in fact, it's the first project that's been built on Santa Clara Valley Transportation Authority lands. And it was supported with a $28.7 million Affordable Housing and Sustainable Communities Program award. It includes an added 135 much-needed affordable housing units just south of downtown San Jose, where affordable housing is very much needed. And it's conveniently located right next to the Tamiya and Caltrain and light rail stations. They didn't have the connection running when I was there, so I had to take an Uber. Half of the homes are reserved for rapid rehousing to help residents avoid homelessness. And those easy transportation options are up and running now. In fact, it was 2 days later that the light rail connection was up and running. And those on-site amenities include a daycare, food pantry, and community gathering spaces. So the new complex will really enhance quality of life across the board for residents in that neighborhood where those kinds of amenities did not exist previously. All right, thank you. Next slide. So I mentioned earlier the first Community Resilience Center that was supported through a CRC grant from SGC held a grand opening, and our staff from the Community Resilience Centers program attended. They visited Santa Rosa to celebrate the ribbon cutting for It's the Series Community Project Center for Food, Youth, and Community, located in Santa Rosa. It's the first implementation project from round 1 to complete construction. Our staff was able to tour the facility, including a community garden space, all-electric kitchen, and solar-powered microgrid system. And this center is, it's not just a building, it's a community anchor for connection, health, and resilience in one of Sonoma County's most underserved neighborhoods. I believe you were there as well, Amar, right? Yeah. All right, next slide, please. All right, our factory-built housing program. The regional pilot program has just opened its application period for round 3. We have about $10 million in awards available this round. And as you know, factory-built housing has the potential to help speed up delivery of much-needed new housing overall. It's also proving promising in helping disaster survivors recover. We are aware that there are firestorm survivors in LA County who are already using factory-built housing in their recovery. We are familiar with one of those individuals, Steve Gibson from Altadena, whom council members met in 2025 after he and many of his neighbors tragically lost their homes. Our factory-built housing program manager, Jin Zhang, and SGC Chair Sama Sefa met with Steve and other Eaton fire survivors last month to reconnect and see firsthand his nearly completed new resilient factory-built home. And as he puts it, he wants to be an example for others. They're the first to rebuild in their neighborhood, and they're almost ready to move back in. And so they want to prove that it can be done and show it to their neighbors as well. Our factory-built housing can help communities move from loss to stability faster by shortening those construction timelines and reducing costs. Our program makes strategic investments in innovative models for regional collaboration, planning, and implementation that can be adapted and scaled across the state. And I am very much looking forward to bringing forth whatever we are able to glean from our round 3 at a future council meeting this year. All right, next slide. Last month, our team launched the new Tribal Housing Pre-Development Fund to support California Native American tribes' preparation to build affordable housing and access other state funding for affordable housing programs specifically. So along with our existing tribal capacity building program, these initiatives fund a wide range of activities related to tribal housing development and climate resiliency. Draft grant guidelines for both programs, which were developed based on a series of interviews and engagements with tribes, are available now on the Strategic Growth Council website for public comment, and that public comment period will remain open until April 6th. So stay tuned for when both programs' final guidelines are approved and applications are launched. We will be bringing those final guidelines to you at a future council meeting as well. And tune in later this meeting when our team shares the release of the California Tribal Gap Analysis. All right, next slide. From Watts to Santa Rosa, Altadena to San Jose, and beyond, our staff continues to visit grantees and partners statewide to connect, provide support, and gain invaluable input. Here's a few more examples for you of how our staff has been all over the state in the last couple of months. The ASIC Technical Assistance Team held 3 regional workshops in Marin, Sacramento, and Santa Ana to provide expert guidance, tools, and capacity building resources to help applicants create competitive, high-quality project applications. The workshops drew in over 95 attendees in total. Staff with our tribal programs are hosting workshops this month as well and next month on draft guidelines in person and virtually across the state, starting at the Consolidated Tribal Health Project in Redwood Valley last week. And our Transformative Climate Community staff recently attended a partners meeting with the Mendocino County Resource Conservation District and participated in the San Diego Foundation's collaborative stakeholder meeting. Probably not on the same day, because we have been to the very top of the state as well as the very bottom. And we have also visited sites including the Gettyville Rancheria near Ukiah, the Hopland Band of Pomo Indians, Tierras Indigenous Community Land Trust Mixed Use Housing, Project New Village Community Garden, and Chicano Park Museum and Cultural Center. Coming soon, our 2026 Regional Catalyst convenings kick off next month. With the Central Coast convening, it's going to be held in Salinas, followed in late April with one in the San Joaquin region, which will be held in the same location as the Strategic Growth Council meeting in April. And all of these convenings bring together regional partners to exchange knowledge, best practices, and successes about community-driven climate, energy, and land use efforts, connect directly with state reps and regional assistance providers, and understand the region's priorities, and co-create a set of regional and state-focused policy actions that help guide Strategic Growth Council's strategic planning and our work in general. Just want to give a big shout out to the Strategic Growth Council's Connecting Communities team, the Governor's Office of Land Use and Climate Innovation team, and our partners at the UC Berkeley Possibility Lab and the California Climate and Energy Collaborative as we have continued to move forward with our regional catalyst convenings. We're really excited to see and share the ideas and actions that come out of these convenings this year. So that concludes my presentation of the Executive Director's Report. Much more to come during the meeting, so stay tuned, and I will hand it back to you, Chair Asafa.
Great, thanks, Aaron, for that thorough presentation. I would like to ask Justin to give us a refresher reminder on the public comments, and then we'll jump on to council discussion.
Yes. So if members of the public would like to comment on this item, please submit a public comment card at the front table, or side table really. To make virtual public comment, please visit sgc.ca.gov/meetings-events/council and complete the public comment form. Pass it back to you, Chair.
Great, thanks. We'll open it up to council discussion on that presentation on executive director's reports. Any council discussions? Secretary Johnson.
Just briefly, appreciate both the photos of the trips, but also getting a better flavor and picture of the projects themselves. Just noting for the public and everyone else, what a cool job to travel across California and see this phenomenal work in this beautiful state. So I know it's a lot to travel, but really appreciate the team lifting up these projects and seeing the work come to life. So thank you very much.
Great. Deputy Secretary Jemison.
Yeah, I'll just say that as someone who in a former life was co-manager of TCC, seeing that WATTS program, the WATTS project come to life and see this become real and what you all are doing in the communities and really making our state beautiful and livable and providing the housing we need is just really inspiring. So thank you.
Yes. Well, I'll echo that. I mean, it's just not only just traveling across the country. I think the most in the country, the state, we are like a country. It's bigger than most countries. Just seeing and talking to the people who are impacted by it, that was the most incredible. You know, when I went to Jordan Downs, it's one thing to talk about 5-bedroom affordable housing. I'm not in my practice. You know, it's rare. Affordable housing with 5 bedrooms. And the stats are fantastic, right? The numbers. But beyond that, what was really remarkable is when the residents who fought for that and worked for years are getting up and testifying what that means to them, the ones that are not displaced, or not being displaced. It was incredible just to hear that directly. And that is, you know, the impact, whether it's 1% or 100 residents, what all of the programs that you listed, you know, ground community initiated. We here sit and sort of celebrate the numbers, you know, the amounts or the number of units or the impact. But I think just hearing directly about the impacts of individuals and communities that are impacted is just phenomenal. I just say, thank you to staff, the work that you do in that front, and to council as well. With that, do we have any other comments? Any public comments?
There's no public comment on this item.
Great. So we will now move to item 6, which is the consent calendar. The consent calendar is for routine and non-controversial business. So I'll now pass it over to Erin to walk us through the consent calendar.
Thank you, Chair Safa. I do have a brief overview of the items on the consent calendar that I will provide. The first is the ASIC Round 9 technical amendment. It's this proposed amendment to the Round 9 guidelines is to fix unintentional language and clarify that recorded covenant requirements apply only to HRI capital component and is aligned with the standard agreements. This amendment is to be consistent with prior rounds and accurately reflect some legal authority and program intent. The second item on the consent calendar is the ASIC Round 10 guidelines. Shortly after the council made the Round 9 awards in December, the decision was made to fast track ASIC Round 10 for an award in 2026. The reality is there are limited state housing dollars available in 2026, and we saw a solution with an ASIC award at the end of this year. So the SGC and HCD ASIC teams had to quickly regroup and post draft guidelines, noting that minimal changes were likely to occur in this round so that we could increase familiarity for applicants when the applicant window opens. Changes include formatting changes to reduce lists and tables for legibility, and streamlined and clarified language, reduced repetition, and more consistent terminology throughout the guidelines. These are very minor changes, and any substantial change to the ASIC program could be entertained in the future. I also want to note that we found an error in the initial materials and resolved it by updating the documents this morning. For a detailed list of changes, please review the 2-page document that accompanies the staff report associated with this round. And I think that is all of my remarks for consent calendar. Yes.
Yes. And so if members of the public would like to comment on this item, please submit a public comment card at the table. And to make virtual public comment, please visit sgc.ca.gov/meetings-events/council and complete the public comment form there. We do currently have 2 online comments. So we can start with Courtney Powell. If you can raise your hand, make sure the Zoom operator can see you, and you'll be asked to unmute.
Yes, thank you so much, and good afternoon. My name is Courtney Powell. I'm the policy manager at Resources for Community Development, or RCD, as we're known in the field. RCD is a nonprofit affordable housing organization providing over 3,000 affordable rental homes throughout the Bay Area, and we've long been involved in the ASIC program. I'm sorry to raise these questions so late in the guidelines review process. I know staff have been working to quickly turn around these revised guidelines, and so just challenging that we didn't get to see many of the proposed revisions until this point after the kind of conversation public comment period was over. But my concern that I just wanted to raise is around the proposed changes to section 103.1G5, which is the section regarding proposed rents. And was just hoping to get some clarity around the changes that would specify proposed rents can only be used when the locality has rent restrictions that differ from TCAC. My understanding is that the prior guidelines allowed using proposed rents without any named restrictions. And so I was just hoping that someone from staff could clarify whether that was, in fact, the current practice, or whether this is, potentially a pretty substantive change to the underwriting policy if, previously, like as in other HCD programs, proposed rents could be used more broadly. I will note that in like the multifamily supernova, developments are allowed to underwrite using proposed rents for units that are restricted to special needs populations at 30% AMI or below. And so I'm curious why the proposed ASIC policy would be different than this policy, which, is in other department programs. it really is best practice to underwrite to proposed rents for buildings that include portions of them as supportive housing, because folks in those units can't afford the 30% AMI restricted rent. And we're concerned that the proposed change could disincentivize using the ASIC funds for buildings that contain a percentage of supportive housing. Any clarification you can provide on this would be so greatly appreciated. And thank you so much for your work in getting these guidelines out the door quickly. Appreciate it.
Thank you. We'll take comment from Dean Sheik. If you can raise your hand online.
Good afternoon. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Hi, my name is Dean Sheik with Partnership for Advancement of Near America, or PANA, speaking on behalf of a coalition of 16 organizations that submitted comments on draft guidelines regarding eligibility for community-based developers. PANA is a community-led organization that advocates for refugee displaced population in San Diego region throughout California and across the country. We have unique opportunity to build welcoming global village in San Diego with affordable housing, multicultural programming on land that we own. However, community-based organizations like ours cannot meet experience requirements for developers to apply for these funds. There has been some programs made in guidelines for other programs, such as multifamily housing program, and recognizing the need to build capacity for community-based developers through initiative and partnership. We understand that the time frame for publishing these guidelines for ASEC was too short to address our concerns. However, we hope that as this program transitions from SGC to the new housing agency, CHHA, you'll continue to work with us on improving opportunities for community-led and community-owned projects like ours for the future rounds of applications. Thank you.
Thank you. And those are all of the public comments that we have for this item.
Yes, I think we can respond offline if you're comfortable. I don't know if Amar wants to address anything further.
I think there was the response to the question on the section 103.5. It's actually just proposing some clarification and alignment from what I understand from our HCD partners, but we can have a detailed delineation of what the actual differences are, so we can get back to you all.
Chair?
Go ahead, Member Capretz.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
I couldn't
You
hear
can go
anything.
ahead. Sorry.
Okay. Just really quickly, I wanted to follow up on the comment from PANA and say that I want to thank HCD because as the member representing San Diego, I was asked to learn more about what different opportunities were for the organization and development of this innovative, exciting Global Village project. And HCD did meet with us, and I think they're even setting up another meeting. So I just wanted to thank everybody for coming together and working with this organization and trying to find creative solutions. So thank you so much.
Great. Anyone else? Can I have a motion and a second to approve the consent calendar?
So moved.
Secretary Moss
Second.
moved. Second. Deputy Secretary Eisen, second.
Great.
Roll
So we'll
call.
take roll call. Director Acefa,
Yes.
Vice Chair Cardenas,
Yes.
Secretary Moss,
Aye.
Secretary Johnson,
Aye.
Deputy Secretary Jameson,
Aye.
Deputy Secretary Eisent,
Aye.
Senior Housing Policy Coordinator Jackson,
Aye.
Public Member Capretz,
Yes.
and Deputy Secretary Schwartz.
Aye.
Right, unanimous pass.
Great, moving along. We are now on item number 7, which is an informational item on the California Tribal Gap Analysis Report. So I would like to invite Anna Lupin, Program Manager for Community Assistance for Climate Equity, or CASE.
Thank you.
Anna? There you are.
Great. Thank you so much. Good afternoon, council members and Chair Asafa. Today, I'm really excited to be able to introduce this item that is a really critical step forward towards understanding how the state can help to deepen our support for tribal climate leadership. SGC initially commissioned this report back in 2020 in partnership with the California Energy Commission because of the alignment with SGC's mandate to coordinate state activities and recommend policies and investment strategies related to climate, housing, transportation, and land use. The effort also aligns with the goals of Governor Newsom's N1519 executive order, which created the Truth and Healing Council. I'd also like to take the opportunity to recognize many former SGC staff members who played a role in this report, including Coral Abbott, Sophie Young, Leah Fisher, and Liz Grassi, who I'm sure many of you know, and who are really passionate about being able to ensure that we are supporting tribes in the best way that we can, as well as the Energy Commission's current and formal tribal liaisons, Sierra Graves and Tom Gates, and their teams. The contractor team who led the research for this report, which Joss is here representing, gathered direct feedback from California Native American tribes and reviewed a variety of secondary sources to provide recommendations on how the state can best help tribes advance clean energy and climate change initiatives. And so I'm very excited to be able to introduce Josh Simmons, who will be able to share more about the methodology and findings in the report. Josh is president, founder, and an attorney with Prosper Sustainably. He's worked with tribes since 1999 and is a former environmental director for the Santa Ynez Band of Chumash Indians. In addition to leading the California Tribal Gap Analysis, Josh is co-director of SGC's Regional Climate Collaborative funded Tribal Energy and Climate Collaborative, which serves 26 member tribes of the Southern California Chairmen's Association. And so I'll hand it over to you, Josh.
Thank you so much, Ina. Thank you so much, Ina. Thank you all for having me today. I am really excited, appreciate the opportunity to present the final report, and honored to be trusted and partnering with so many tribes across the state to be in this position to be able to gather information, feedback, and recommendations from the relationships we've been able to establish over the years. So the California Clean Energy and Climate Change Gap Analysis really is building upon the leadership that tribes are already taking in this space. There certainly are many challenges and gaps that tribes are facing and continue to face. But this report also provides an opportunity for tribes to help support advanced state priorities and goals in energy and climate as well. Next slide, please. I'm, as Ina mentioned, president of Prosper Sustainably, and who led the report in partnership with a number of other partners. The report was co-commissioned by Strategic Growth Council and California Energy Commission using the leftover ARA funds that were used for the same funds that were used for the tribal government challenge grants. The scope of the report focused on the needs and gaps that tribes are facing across the state relating to clean energy and climate change adaptation and resilience. The study encompassed all California Native American tribes, regardless of federal recognition and land holding status. Next slide, please. So the overarching goals were to identify tribes' priorities, needs, and barriers in clean energy and climate change, and to provide recommendations and inform state assistance programs in addressing the tribal identified priorities, needs, and goals. So when we talk about state assistance programs, we're talking about grants, technical assistance, training, capacity building programs. So when I say assistance programs throughout, that's what we're referring to. Another key goal of the gap analysis was to advance collaboration and build the relationships between the tribes and state agencies. Next slide, please. The primary research questions were: what assistance gaps do California tribes face in advancing their clean energy and climate change goals and meeting those needs? And how can the state address those assistance gaps through its assistance programs? So there was both primary and secondary research that informed this analysis, study, and recommendations. The primary research was a 37 question questionnaire that was administered across the state. Either tribes could respond on their own. Most of them did it in person or not in person. It was during the pandemic. Most of them did it virtually. So it was more of an interview style questionnaire. And there was a lot of secondary research and reaching out to other agencies and conducting other research. So we focused on what are the unmet clean energy and climate change goals, priority needs, barriers, challenges, obstacles for tribes on one side, mostly focusing on the primary research of that questionnaire, and then also what external assistance is available or could be available. What are some of the access challenges, the availability, what is the awareness of the assistance that's out there as well, and that funneled down to identifying what are the assistance gaps and also recommendations how to address those assistance gaps and addressing the tribal needs and priorities. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned, Prosper Sustainably and our state partners were supported by a number of other team members. So we were supported by GC Green, whose founder is Liz Perez. So it's a Native veteran-owned business. Liz is a member of the North Fork Rancheria. Shastagon, who with SGC Consulting, whose main job is as a tribal environmental director and tribal historic preservation officer. Burr Energy LLC, and the UCLA Luskin Center for Innovation. Next slide, please. So we all 181 California tribes, and this is who we had on our list at the time the study was conducted, built on the NAC list, were invited to participate. We had representatives from 76 tribes across the state participate in completing the questionnaire. This included 57 federally recognized tribes, federally recognized and 19 non-federally recognized tribes. Of those, 64 had land holdings and 12 did not have any land holdings at the time. The questionnaire could be responded to by more than one representative for each tribe. So we had a range of participants, sometimes multiple people. We had 25 council or executive members of the tribes, as well as 30 of other administrative positions and mainly environmental, natural resources, and energy and utilities participants. Next slide, please. So the report itself is 550 pages, so you probably don't want to spend your spring break trying to read the whole thing. The main body of the report is about 100 pages, including a 13-page executive summary, so you could start there. This is the outline of the main body of the report. I would like to point you to the recommendations and conclusions, which is about 30 pages. That is really the meat of the report, what we believe are going to be the actionable next steps to address some of the challenges. But it's also worth reviewing the barriers and assistance gaps section below, where there's a lot of good meat on the findings of the specific challenges that tribes faced. Next slide, please. So there are 450 pages worth of appendices that you can choose to read or not as your leisure. This provides kind of the details that went behind the study and really probably 200 pages worth of every aspect of the questionnaire and all the drop downs that could be selected. Next slide, please. There is a section in Appendix N that had a preliminary assessment of assistance gaps in top need areas that really was kind of foundation of how this could potentially be done more systematically in the future as well. But there's some interesting sections in the appendices as well. Next slide, please. I mentioned the recommendations and conclusions section, which are really, if you were going to start or spend your time reading anything, I would highly advise focusing on that. The recommendations and conclusions have three different categories of recommendations. The first is for improving state-led tribal outreach, communication, and engagement. The second series is for improving tribal access and utilization of existing state assistance programs. And the third category of recommendations is for increasing state investments to create and expand state assistance programs that are serving tribes. Next slide, please. So here is a very high level list of the recommendations under that first category of improving tribal outreach, communication, and engagement. So this approximately represents 10 pages worth of recommendations. So this is obviously just the paraphrase title of each one. They range from some things that are more straightforward, but I still think, need some attention in terms of increasing tribes' knowledge and awareness of assistance programs, to some things that are more complex and going to be more of a challenge to overcome or to accomplish in terms of centralizing, streamlining, and sustaining interagency communications engagement on the assistance programs and the communication engagement with tribes in the areas of energy and climate. Next slide, please. So for the second category of recommendations for improving tribal access and utilization of existing state programs, again, there's a lot of meat under these. You'll see simplify, streamline, and coordinate grant solicitations and reduce and simplify grants management requirements. There are several recommendations under each of these that are detailed. And then one thing we found too is we were trying to get information on the performance of various state agencies and the metrics that they had on how well tribes are utilizing their programs. That really was difficult to get this data, and that really some standardization of those performance metrics and reporting out to the governor's office, to other agencies, to tribes themselves would greatly benefit this in really understanding how well these programs are meeting the needs of tribes. Next slide, please. And then finally, the final series of recommendations on creating and expanding programs to benefit tribes and build capacity is really focused on future investments beyond, the prior one was about best utilizing what is existing, and this is about additional investments. So on these slides, we've kind of categorized them into funding needs and technical assistance and capacity building. So on the side of funding needs, I think Strategic Growth Council and other agencies are doing some of this more so now than they were even when the study began, in terms of offering phased funding assistance for programs to be able to do planning, pre-development activities, implementation in a way that, communities can start and tribes can start where they're at and then have a pathway to actually successfully implement a program. And then on the technical assistance and capacity building side of things, where we have more complex things like established tribal serving regional energy and climate hubs, which I think the Tribal Energy and Climate Collaborative is an example of, to creating a centralized and evergreen inventory and pipeline of fundable tribal climate and energy projects. Next slide, please. So we're really excited to have finalized these recommendations. I think, in working with Strategic Growth Council, California Energy Commission, we have already been seeing the implementation of the recommendations. We appreciate the partnership that's been ongoing through Prosper and working with Strategic Growth Council, through Tribal Energy and Climate Collaborative, working with the Strategic Growth Council, and our continued engagement with tribes across the state. So the next steps are going to be to host a public webinar to review the final California Tribal Gap Analysis report, which will be on March 26th from 1 to 2 p.m. I believe we're tentatively going to be doing an informational item on California Energy Commission's business meeting as well on, I believe, April 27th. That's not locked in yet. But we really want, what we don't want is for this report and its recommendations to sit on a shelf. We are very much about action and impact and benefiting tribes and them seeing that all of this work was put into something that they contributed to that's actually creating meaningful change within their communities. So we want to meet with relevant agencies and working groups to review the report findings and recommendations and discuss how they can be implemented. And we welcome the input and responses from any agency at any point, and really, the request to come present to your respective agencies or anybody who's really listening here today. We hope to then recruit and form a committee made up of a cross-section of agencies across the state that are trying to engage tribes on climate energy related matters, and to work with that committee in developing and executing an implementation plan for moving forward with those recommendations. It's going to be absolutely critical to continue to engage tribes in appropriate ways and appropriate points in the implementation of those recommendations, and empowering them to carry forward the recommendations and the next steps that they can carry forward as no agency could necessarily do as lead. And then we want to annually report the progress to you all, to agencies across the state, and to the tribes on what is being accomplished and how we can continue to improve and refine the implementation plan and activities. So the Tribal Energy and Climate Collaborative is prepared and eager to be carrying the ball forward on this through the RCC funded collaborative. And hopefully that'll kind of help kickstart this off the ground. And we've had great support from Ina and the Strategic Growth Council team, and Sierra and California Energy Commission on these efforts, and we look forward to being able to share those next steps and our progress in meeting those with you. Next slide, please. So really appreciate the support of Strategic Growth Council, of the California Energy Commission, of all the tribes that took their time to participate and contribute to this, and just excited to see this start to change, help communities address sometimes intractable challenges that they're facing in addressing their climate goals and their energy goals, in trying to build partnerships and relationships and work effectively with state agencies. And I think we really have a great opportunity to build upon this platform. So thank you so much.
Yeah, and thank you so much, Josh. I think definitely want to emphasize what he said around making sure this isn't sort of a plan that sits on a shelf. And so, as Josh mentioned, we are really going to be focusing and thinking through what implementation of these recommendations might look like. Where is that sort of low-hanging fruit? Where are the things that we can be able to do to best serve tribes? And so we're going to be thinking through how we design, that committee to move forward, and would love to invite, all of your agencies to be a part of that. Would love to have folks from, agencies across our council agencies coming to the webinar that we're hosting. We're also very open to being able to come to give individual presentations to agencies if that's of interest, or to specific working groups. So really, we were sort of running to the finish line to be able to get this report finished. And now I think are really transitioning into this phase of figuring out what that next step is. And we're planning to come back to council as well later this year to be able to kind of share where we are in terms of the implementation plan. So with that, I think that concludes our presentation. We can pass it back to Chair Acefa.
Great. Thank you, Ina and Josh, for the thorough presentation. I'm still trying to get over the 500-page.
The 30 pages. Just focus on the 30 pages.
Yeah, that's helpful. But after Justin does a reminder for public comments, we'll kick it off for council discussion. Justin.
So if members of the public would like to comment on this item, please submit a public comment card at the side table. And to make virtual public comment, please visit sgc.ca.gov/meeting-events/council and complete the public comment form there. Pass it back to you, Chair.
Great. Any council comments, questions? Secretary Moss?
Well, thank you so much for the presentation and the work. I mean, it's not 500 pages for nothing. So I appreciate just the intentional engagement. I was actually just with some of our tribal leaders this week, talking a lot about some of the same challenges that are referenced in this report. And so one of my questions is, I think although this is focused on clean energy and climate goals, this is also transferable to how tribes are trying to do community development in their communities, right? And so I wouldn't want us to just isolate this around, particularly because I think some of the recommendations around engagement and outreach and how tribes actually understand our assistance programs, et cetera, transcend various policy areas. So really, I guess I'm thinking about how can we use this as information guidance for other areas that we are working. I mean, SGC is working with tribes in almost every aspect of the work. And so really thoughtful about how do we utilize the recommendations in other areas. We also have a tribal summit coming up in April that Secretary Schneider Ashtari is putting on. And so I think it would be really helpful also to lift up some of these recommendations and let folks know that that this report has been completed. Because it does strike me, and I think my colleagues on the council and also just across state government, we're all doing a tremendous amount of work to ensure that we are not just gathering tribal input in the work that we do, but in fact, communities are improved by state partnerships in our tribal communities. And so I guess my overall comment is, how do we activate these recommendations based on infrastructure that we already have? We have tribal liaisons across all state departments. What are we doing to make sure they're educated on the recommendations that you all are doing? So just some thoughts overall about using this perhaps as a platform for other places where we're engaging our tribal leaders and communities, and not duplicating efforts, but actually, to me, as y'all know, all things are housing. Climate is a housing so health. So just a bit of integration, I think, would be really helpful as we think about implementation.
Great points. Anyone else? Deputy Secretary Jameson, or?
Well, I'll be very quick, and then I see Sarah over there
Oh,
with her
sorry,
hand up too. So sorry, Sarah, I'm jumping the line. I just wanted to say thank you very, very much for all your work on this. It really couldn't come at a better time, at least from my standpoint. At CDFA, we have some Proposition 4 funding for a new tribal food sovereignty program. And so we'd certainly like to take you up on your offer to meet with us as an individual state agency and hear what you've learned. So yeah, thank you. And I'll pass it to Sarah.
Sarah.
Sold.
Great. Thank you. Well, thank you so much for the presentation and for the work over many years to get to this point. I know that there will be some next steps coming, right, as you outlined, but did want to note that obviously one of the recommendations that was uplifted and sort of in the summary is around the requirements for tribes to use waivers of sovereign immunity when working with state agencies. And this topic really comes up quite frequently in the work that we do with tribes and in tribal spaces, including at the Cali PA Tribal Advisory Council meetings. So this is a topic that we are particularly interested in. We know that these requirements undermine tribal sovereignty, and we really hope to work towards removing this barrier as we continue to build our relationships with tribes. So wanted to make that note as you undertake the next steps here. And it's very good to know about the upcoming webinar. I plan to share that with my colleagues at Cali PA to get the right folks plugged in on that.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Mr. Chair, if I might.
Yes, Vice Chair, please.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thanks to all of you who worked so hard and long in getting this report together. Now, I understand that there are next steps, and there's one of your goals is an implementation plan. So this may be, quite anticipatory, but I'm just wondering, since there seemed to be such a clear demarcation with the first identified gap, renewable energy and energy storage, and all of the rest, I'm just wondering, taking that as a prime example, have there yet been identified any action steps toward mitigating closing that particular important gap. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I guess one thing I would want to caution everybody reading the reports is you looked more closely and see that there's like been a top 8 identified needs areas in solar and storage and microgrids kind of rose to the top across the board, which we need to consider as an average. We have, as you saw, 12 tribes or more, I think that didn't have any land holdings at all. And so, for them, they're probably not even in a position to pursue those types of projects. We're kind of going in the opposite direction right now. A lot of the resources that have been available for tribes to support these projects have come from the federal government, from tax credits and funding sources that are now being cut. But I think it's, as always, tribes have been leading the space here. They've been leveraging a lot of state funding for these projects as well. They've been using California Energy Commission funding, the EPIC funding. They've been doing research and development and demonstration projects on microgrids and flow batteries and other types of innovative technologies and solutions. So I think tribes will continue to find a way. Certainly, more resources being made available by the states that aren't just some tribes just need, even before you install solar plus storage, just basic electrification. We're in we have a challenge right now where tribes can take them years to get a new home hooked up to the grid, and they're actually, and I just completed a project with one tribe that energized a series of 9 homes and facilities in the center of a reservation that was a mile away from the closest power that had to do solar plus storage to power their community, because there really was no hope of them getting the electrification. So I think, the state continuing to provide its assistance programs, building those out as much as possible, finding ways to incorporate workforce development, but also economic development, so that tribes are kind of co-investors in these new technologies and solutions will be part of the long-term solution. And ultimately, I think tribes and their communities and their lands and their creativity and innovation are going to be at the forefront of solving the energy and climate challenges that are faced statewide with the grid constraints that we face as well. So I think it's just going to take, kind of sustained commitment and champions within each agency pushing for funding for these projects. And I'll add one last thing, is just in a phased way too, because tribes are in different places, so that tribes can get money for funding, they can get for planning, they can get money to support developing their own staff and capabilities, they can get funding for pre-development, and then still get that funding for implementation in support, and also stacking the other resources that continue to be available.
Great. I echo as well. I think the analysis in what it revealed is just extensive, and both what we hear from multiple tribes that we engage with, but it's great to see it memorialized in this document. But to Secretary Moss and Vice Chair Cardenas' point, I think the devil is in the details, how you implement this, because part of it is going to be, which ones are more urgent versus the ones that could, will be ongoing. But the other, I think, more important is what is the reality check as you go through the implementation process, promise versus what could actually be implemented, whether it's the significant challenges around funding and or any other obstacles. So just sorting through those through the implementation process and being transparent in that process is going to be really critical. But the foundation is there. But I think at the end of the day, significant amount of lists, I think being realistic around the implementation and sorting through that priorities, I think is going to be critical. But incredible work.
possible, Chair, I wanted to also respond to Secretary Moss's comments earlier. I really appreciate the point around the fact that there's a lot of recommendations that I think are very relevant to all agencies and not necessarily specifically to energy and climate. I think too often when we do engagement, we are very focused on one sort of silo, and communities don't live in silos, and they give us feedback on everything, and we really need to be taking that feedback back to our agencies and to our partners to make sure that we're not continually going to ask the same questions over and over again, and each agency doing something different. So I think that's absolutely something we want to be thinking through in terms of the implementation of this work. Is like a lot of this is general to state agency engagement, I think, more broadly. So we've been thinking about what it looks like to engage tribal liaisons across the state. How can we engage Secretary Snyder's office and sort of think through what might make sense with the recommendations more broadly than just in this sort of relatively narrow segment, even though, of course, climate touches on everything.
Yes, Secretary Moss, please.
Just a follow-up question, specific. Thank you for that. I really, I couldn't agree more. So any way we can be helpful, we are certainly willing to be partners in that conversation. I was curious that in the report, there was a finding around inconsistent treatment of tribal status as disadvantaged communities as a part of the DAC. I wondered if you could give me a little bit more context on that finding, because we've had many conversations around communities who don't quite understand how they don't end up being a part of a DAC when they feel like they are, but the way that the formula and methodology is done. So I think the staff have done a good job sort of explaining that in our ASIC process, but I'm curious how it showed up in this report.
Yeah, so one thing to keep in mind is that most of the research occurred between 2021 and 2022, and I think we've seen some significant advancements in trying to define tribal communities as being served by programs that are trying to serve disadvantaged communities. So we've, Cal EnviroScreen has kind of broadened its definition. What we were seeing before is very inconsistent definitions of who is and who is not eligible, what tribal communities, what lands are and are not eligible. There still are certainly, it's clear with federally recognized tribes and trust lands, like that became, okay, in Cal EnviroScreen, that's automatic, like that by definition. But fee lands, non-trust lands, those being included in the definition, and then the ownership of the tribe versus individuals, and then for tribes without federal recognition of their lands as well. It's not always as well defined. I think I've seen Strategic Growth Council in trying to take a very broad definition to that, but we still can see I think we see more inclusivity among the tribal specific programs, and the ones that aren't specific to tribes, we see the definition of what tribes are eligible, what tribal lands are eligible, being kind of not as consistent.
Yeah, and I'll just say I think that's consistent with some of the engagement that we've done with tribes as well. I think the non-federally recognized piece is where there's, I think, the most discrepancy around whether or not they're considered disadvantaged communities or not. That may have evolved since we did engagement around this for our last round of the tribal capacity building program. So maybe take that with a grain of salt, but I do think it continues to be an issue, and obviously, the eligibility piece around non-federally recognized tribes gets complicated as well, of course.
Secretary, is that?
Yeah, I wanted to build on that just to say that the update to Cal EnviroScreen 5.0 is actually public and out for public comment right now. And once Cal EnviroScreen gets updated, Cal EPA actually runs the process for designating disadvantaged communities in the state, and so there will be a public process there, including around tribal lands. So more to come over the coming months.
Great. Anyone else from council? Seeing none, Justin, do we have any public comments?
We have 0 online comments, but we have 1 in-person comment. So if Chairwoman Emily Bergeno could come up to the podium, and let's make sure that this mic is unmuted. Yeah, thank you.
Can you hear me? Well, fine. Helka, for the sake of the time limitations put on me, I'm going to just stick to English. Normally, I introduce myself in my traditional language. But today I'm here as a proud auntie, but I am the chairwoman for the Kumeyaay Digueño Land Conservancy, which is made up of the Kumeyaay Nation on matters of land conservation and tribal ecological knowledge for the past 20 years. And we've been a leading land conservancy these past 20 years. So I just want to say thank you to everyone who put on and supported this effort. Some takeaways just hearing about it as I didn't get a chance to participate. San Diego is known for having the most tribes in the in one county in the state, but also the country, with 18 tribal federally recognized. There's also, I believe, 2 unrecognized tribes in the county. We're also one of the most biodiverse counties in the state, as well as the country, as we have the coast, mountains, and desert in one county. You can visit the ocean and the desert in half a day, really. Some notes I wanted to point out to the council members and to SGC staff in general was the dates noted of this report, 2021 and 2022, when most tribal nations were barely surviving in the pandemic. They were barely able to feed their people, care for their elders. So my initial comment is this is an incomplete report. There's less than half of the tribes, I believe it was 180 that was put on the screen, but less than half of the tribes participated in this report. So I just wanted to flag that as well. And yeah, as well, I appreciate the comments earlier about the waivers of sovereign immunity, because when we continue this act, we're continue statehood genocide that created this state by undermining and dissembling our tribal sovereignty and connection to the land. And it's through ways formally of these waivers. There's other examples. So I do want to point that out. I've made many comments at this meeting virtually and otherwhere, but as well as the importance of tribal cultural resources that was not put on the screen. The climate issue will always include culture, and that was not pointed out, and that is the huge gap. These green energies are erasing our cultural heritage and identity when they have to build them and disturb the land, which has our ancestors, which has our stories, which has the waterways. So I'll stop. I know my time's up. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your comments. We did receive another request for comment here in person. Laura O'Connor. If you want to approach the podium.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Laura O'Connor. I work with community capital and cultural stewards to try to build partnerships across the state and help move some of the amazing work y'all are doing forward all the time. Total appreciation. I had the honor of being at a gathering with some tribal leaders who were at the 30 by 30 conference, and that Deputy Secretary Thompson held beautiful convenings there. And as CNRA has been doing an amazing job from my perspective, they asked, and it's very much what I heard you say, Chair Asafa. I couldn't really hear you very well from the background, but all these plans and when implementation happens, what is the accountability structure? And they asked it specifically in the light of an administration that's about to change a lot of hands, and a lot of different people will be in different roles potentially across agencies. And so what is an aspirational accountability structure? That was asked from a vice chair of a tribe, knowing I was coming here today. And then secondly, I had heard another conversation relating to education and it was mentioned to me that there's no tribal liaison for the California Department of Education, and I don't know if that's accurate now, but since Secretary Moss, since you brought that up, I thought I would just put that out if folks know if that's true or not. And obviously, these are just ponderings to consider, and thank you for your amazing work. Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes public comment for this item.
Great. Thank you for the comments from public. Ina or Josh, is there anything you want to address from those questions?
Sorry, and I appreciate the feedback we received, and I actually neglected to include in the process that when we were circulating the report for feedback, particularly the recommendations and conclusions, we actually did incorporate feedback we received from those that participated in those events into the report. So there was some input beyond the initial surveys. I do agree. It's, we would love to be able to have all 180 or how many ever tribes there are at a given time in the state, participate in this. And I think that's also, goes to this needing to be an ongoing effort to continue to engage all tribes and be consistent, be persistent, be there, always be showing up and providing that opportunity and helping them build capacity, because it's a capacity and resource strain for tribes to participate in these things. They're being asked to provide feedback on so many things in just 1 week, let alone, just focus on the gap analysis too. And it's a detailed report. We kind of scratch the surface with what it does cover. There are aspects of that focus on cultural resources, natural resources, and others as well. But I also hope this is just, a starting point. I hope that this isn't, a one and done type thing. And I think it really, at the end of the day, it comes down to like what results, how do we use this as a springboard, and how do we have that accountability? And at least in my work with the Tribal Energy and Climate Collaborative and the work we're doing with tribes across the state, we intend to continue to push this forward and progress with as many of the recommendations and addressing these needs as possible.
Thanks for Ina. Do you have? Okay. Well, I think I'm going to take chair's prerogative to make comments based on listening to the public comments as well. I think to the point around the chairwoman's, the timing of when this was done, but also it's about 3-4 years ago. So there may be new things that may come up. So where I'm going is, I think to your point, this could be a springboard in the implementation part of it, so that this doesn't become a static document, but also receives any new issues that may come up or things that we haven't. So it becomes a framework to help in those conversations, because there will be things that have changed in one way or the other. So how does that process accommodate, that kind of incorporation of new ideas? Great. Any other comments? We'll move on to now the next item, which is item 8, which is a discussion item. This is an update to the California FIVS Climate Assessment. And now I'd like to invite Elia Baker-Lowe, California Climate Assessment Program Manager for the FIVS Assessment, to present this item. Thank you, Ina and Josh, again.
Thank you, Chair Sefa. Thank you for having me here today. I have another presentation about many, many pages, and I come to you with a request to help us make sure this doesn't sit on a shelf as well. So,
Elia, could you get the mic closer a little?
Okay, can you hear me now? Great. Okay. So my name is Aaliyah Becker-Lowe. I work for the Governor's Office of Land Use and Climate Innovation. And I have the incredible privilege and challenge of coordinating the state's 5th climate change assessment. Today, I'm representing a very incredibly broad network across agencies, across universities, tribal nations, community organizers, so many that are collectively building this resource. And I'm very excited to provide a bit of an update today. I think we could go to the next slide. and to then open this up for a discussion about how we can partner and align these resources with our various aspirations to create a more resilient state. So I will move to the next slide, please. So I want to acknowledge that the state has continued to experience far more frequent extreme weather events and trends through the years. We've seen catastrophic wildfires, severe drought, extreme precipitation events, and everything in between. This is, of course, leading to tremendous damage and economic losses across the state. These are very personal experiences and events that we are all, in some way connected to. Unfortunately, this is also something that we're starting to expect to grapple with on a year-to-year basis. But to do that effectively requires sustained investment in climate change research and science, and strategically integrating those findings into our planning process and our policies. We need to be able to understand and anticipate what's coming. And so that is kind of the premise of this entire assessment and what I look forward to discussing today. Next slide, please. So what is the assessment? This is an effort that is built on the foundation set before us, starting in 2006, was the first assessment, and LCI now leads the development of this. We do this in partnership with the Natural Resources Agency, the Strategic Growth Council, the California Energy Commission, and again, many other partners. This is a state of the science portfolio that helps us unpack and uplift the best available science and information, also recognizing lived experience in that portfolio. And it helps us understand what our climate future is, what's happening between now and the end of the century, what can we anticipate in terms of extreme events and trends, how do we position ourselves to respond adaptively and proactively to those challenges. So we're partnering with other government entities, academia, tribal communities, and so many partners to create that new research and data products that help us answer those questions. And to really unpack again the ways that California's very diverse communities and geographies are experiencing these trends. Next slide, please. This schematic gives you a glimpse into the types of products that make up the assessment. By the end of this year, we are going to be producing about 70 distinct research products. That is built by about 1,000 people at this point. We're very proud of this incredible partnership that we've cultivated, and we still need a lot more support to get the word out and to communicate these findings appropriately. So this portfolio is built on a foundation of climate change projections, data, and scenarios. We have a suite of original climate research. This is a very unique part of the state's climate assessment. Unlike other assessments, we invest in original climate research. This includes a portfolio of energy-specific research, helping us understand how to achieve our energy goals, towards a carbon neutral future. We are exploring a series of topics that we call core climate research. And we're very proud to, of course, uplift a new research program, our Tribal Research Grants Program, which is exploring a series of tribally led projects. We also have regional reports and topical reports. I will get into those again, so it's okay to go to the next slide. Thank you. This is my team here, and I just want to acknowledge and introduce you to this incredible group of people that is helping to coordinate all of these pieces of the puzzle. Again, who is not reflected here are our many other interagency partners, CNRA, CEC, SGC, and so many across state government that have contributed to helping us develop the scope, set the priorities, and manage the process, finding the right partners to conduct the research and get the word out to the communities that we serve. We also work, of course, very closely with many author teams, advisory groups, editors, reviewers, designers. So I want to find a way to acknowledge all of these folks, and we will be doing so as we start to roll out these products throughout the year. Next slide, please. this, I am very proud to introduce you to our tribal advisory group. We have recently invited 3 new members. We now have a 10-member tribal advisory group. And this is another very unique feature of this assessment process where from the beginning, we've been working with these leaders across state government, across the state, if you will, to help us really understand place-based knowledge, regional specific priorities. How can we uplift and appropriately acknowledge tribal and indigenous perspectives in the research process throughout all steps of the research process? And so we meet on a regular basis. They've been incredible support to our review and editing process, and we're so proud to work alongside this incredible group of people. Next slide, please. So in all, this is a snapshot of our process. We began with a robust scoping process in 2022, 2023. We've been very focused on the development process. So recruiting diverse author teams, conducting public engagement, building out the reports themselves and launching into a review process. This year we're really focused on the dissemination. How do we educate? How do we tell stories about the lessons that we've learned? And so this is a through line that is built on the Strategic Growth Council's climate change research programs, participatory research to policy model, which really leans on these principles for sustainable and inclusive engagement and research, community-centered partnerships, and outcomes-based research. And this slide really showcases how that engagement approach has played out throughout all steps of the development of the assessment. We're so proud to have developed long-term partnerships and networks that have been involved from the beginning, as opposed to a one-time author or a one-time event that speaks about a report that, again, sits on a shelf. We really want to advance the storyline and longevity of these materials. Next slide, please. So as mentioned, a key piece of the portfolio is our regional reports. We have 9 regions that you can see on the screen here. Each are building off of that foundation of original research, the climate projections data and tools, and packaging it in a way that is relevant for the local communities that live in these areas. Each are built on a common framework. Through our engagement process, we conducted some information gathering to understand local level priorities and knit that together into a series of guidance documents, and working very closely with these author teams to bring these resources to life. These synthesize, again, all of those issues, and the real focus is that this is community driven and reflects the priorities that we heard from the beginning of the process. Next slide, please. So in those reports, this is a couple examples of the types of figures and resources that we'll be offering. We have a lot of great data products. You'll see figures like this that show how the increase in temperature will advance throughout our century. We'll also see that precipitation patterns are a little bit harder to pinpoint. But authors are working very closely together with a variety of expert groups to unpack that and really understand, what does it mean region by region? How do we position ourselves to understand what's coming and to prepare proactively to the future ahead of us? Next slide. Here's another example of the types of figures and analysis that the regional reports are going to be offering. This figure shows temperature changes across timescales, and on the right, it explores how many days above a certain temperature, how many days a region will experience a certain temperature above a given threshold. So it's analyses like these across regions that are going to help us anticipate what action is needed in the short and long term, depending on the unique needs of these areas. Next slide, please. The regional reports also highlight priorities that have emerged throughout the community engagement process and case studies of successful adaptation. So, for example, the North Coast report Authors are highlighting how the Arcata marsh treatment ponds and wetlands are an example of a nature-based solution for wastewater treatment that supports ecosystems, sequesters carbon, processes water for 18,000 residents. We have a number of case studies across regions that we're excited to showcase throughout. And I also want to highlight a quote from that draft report. The North Coast's particular circumstances where the same characteristics that create vulnerability, low population density, geographic isolation, and limited resources, they also present opportunities for transformation. And that's absolutely a message that we're grappling with and carrying through all of the products. That we have some challenging circumstances ahead of us, but this is an opportunity to innovate. This is an opportunity to learn and to grow. And so we're very excited to be sharing a lot of those findings in the coming months. Next slide, please. So a couple more pieces of the portfolio, and then we'll get to the conversation, I promise. I want to just give thanks to our various interagency partners that have contributed to this process so far. We're very proud to be able to uplift these various reports. We have 6 reports that interagency partners are contributing to the portfolio, along with just providing great input, guidance, and review of critical materials. On the next slide, I want to drill into some of the other reports that we're funding. So we're investing in topics of statewide significance. These are 4 of those examples that are representing kind of these statewide issues of significance that have come up in our legislation, that have come up in the community engagement process. The first, tribal and indigenous communities. This is a report built off of many lessons learned from the 4th assessment. And this is specifically written by and for tribal communities, exploring how indigenous peoples in California are uniquely grappling with climate impacts and including those indigenous adaptation practices. We also have racial equity and climate justice. This is, of course, a breakdown of how climate change exacerbates existing social, cultural, racial, and economic inequities and challenges across the state. A report that is focusing on climate-induced human displacement and migration. This is looking at climate mobility. How are folks affected on a short-term and long-term basis? What does that mean for things like housing or tourism or our local economies? And finally, a report on climate impacts to the economy. So these are exploring things like county-level analyses, for example, projected per capita annual agricultural damages throughout the century, or the relative impact of temperature on annual GDP. These are, I think, some enormous takeaways that are going to be very transformative to the forthcoming plans and policies that we all are working so hard to advance. Next slide, please. So again, that's what we've been building this year. We've been really getting ready to launch the portfolio in 2025. We've been building that foundation even further by establishing an editorial board, expanding our tribal advisory group, recruiting design teams, recruiting various engagement partners to support us as we roll out these next steps. Next slide, please. And so that brings us to the timeline. So we are on track to disseminate these products with a focus this summer through October. We are excited and plan to engage communities with storytelling and educational events throughout this process. I'm excited to hear some thoughts about how we can partner on these opportunities. And in October, we are featuring a climate conference. And so if you go to the next slide, I want to just offer the save the date. The Resilient California Summit is a place where we are very excited to feature a lot of the findings of the 5th climate change assessment, but it's much broader in scope than that. This is a major 3-day resilient conference organized by the by LCI, by Climate Resolve and Fairland Strategies. We're working very closely with the Packard Foundation Resources Legacy Fund, Resilient Cities Catalyst. Excited to bring on other interagency support to this process. This is going to be located at the Safe Credit Convention Center on October 20th through 22nd this year. And the goal is to bring together climate adaptation and resilience practitioners, to bring together local and state government, to bring together tribal partners, community organizers, utilities, private firms, academics, et cetera. We want to talk about the research findings. We want to talk about innovative climate resiliency projects and how are we strategizing to connect science, policy, and action together. So this is, as we roll out the assessment, we are excited to kind of culminate the final products at this event and really want to work with you to think about how do we ramp up, how do we start to disseminate those findings, how can we align our collective goals as we reach this moment and wrap out this year. This QR code on your screen will take you to a planning survey. For those that are online or in the room, I welcome any input that you might have as we start to put together the next steps of the process. And with that, I think we can go to the final slide, where I will welcome any questions. I look forward to your thoughts about partnership opportunities, how we might apply the resources discussed together in the months and years to come.
Thank you, Ilya. It's I'm really excited about this, in part because of the new information, but more importantly, sort of the uniqueness of this particular one, incorporating indigenous knowledge, which is actually becoming an important component of any climate science globally, not just here, but I think it's we officially made that just as important, if not more important than a lot of the new science that is being done. So really excited, but also excited. I know I can't wait until council discussion to comment, but this is really an important work that my colleagues and others over the coming months can engage and really highlight the importance of that. But I will have Justin repeat her comments on the public engagement, and then we'll have council discussion followed by public comments.
Great. So if members of the public would like to comment on this item, please submit a public comment card at the side table. And to make virtual public comment, please visit sgc.ca.gov/meeting-events/council and complete the public comment form there. And I do also want to provide just a clarification that any speakers who would like to use translation are allotted double time, up to double time. So I apologize for not making that clear earlier. Always appreciate hearing people speak in their original languages. Thank you.
Great. We will open it up to council discussion. Secretary Johnson.
Well, thank you, Chair, and thank you for you and the team's leadership here in this very comprehensive approach and the endeavor that you're taking. I just also want to acknowledge that here we are in California again, pushing forward to address climate change, the biggest and greatest global health threat of our time. And I just want to say some of even just your sample pictures there said a lot in terms of what we can expect going forward, what our history has been in our experience. So just appreciate again that we are very intentional about that, and here again leading with community voice and with tribal voice and with a comprehensive look. You had a slide there that showed the Department of Public Health as one of the partners, and so I'm just grateful for the partnership here, where we'll have the first ever standalone public health report in the assessment, and again, evidence-based approaches in the efforts that we're undertaking, looking at who is disproportionately harmed what we can do about it. Again, is very grateful for the opportunity to partner on that front with public health. And I just want to make sure also that public health, particularly local public health, also becomes a partner in amplifying the results of the assessment and implementation of how we mitigate the harm. I also want to just say that I would love to figure out ways that we, at the state level, we'll work on this, can also support locals who are going to be the trusted messengers, the people in community engaging and talking about what's coming, and again, strategies and how we just do really partner with the local communities as we go forward. For the summit, would also just put a plug back into the public health intersection for having that human health and equity being central pillars of discussion there, just to Secretary Moss's earlier comment, right? So much intersection here in the work that we're doing and how we go forward. So glad to be a partner with you and maybe thinking a little bit more about that and fleshing out that concept. But again, just tremendous appreciation and looking forward. Also very excited about what's to come as these are rolled out. Thank you.
Great. Anyone else? Deputy Secretary Schwartz, I see your hand up.
Thank you. I just want to echo what's already been said. The Natural Resources Agency has been one of the agencies that's worked closely with LCI and SGC. And I had the opportunity to read parts of the assessment, and it's just a really impressive document. And I think, at this moment in time,
Oops, we're losing you.
What's going on at the federal
Deputy Secretary Schwartz, apologies. We're having some difficulty with your connection. Not sure if you're able to refresh your connection in some way, but we would love to hear your comments.
we still.
Lisa, if you could maybe mute her just for now. There we go. I think she'll log back in.
Any other Deputy Secretary Izant?
Well, thank you so much for the presentation. I think to the question of sort of opportunities for partnerships and alignment, I think there is a lot. And so want to make sure that we continue that conversation too, and sort of have a, we can maybe sit down and brainstorm some specific opportunities for ongoing partnership. But a few examples of things that come to mind for us is at Cali PA, many of our boards, departments, and offices are integrated with networks of communities throughout the state, including, I'm not sure if you're familiar with our Identifying Violators Affecting Neighborhoods, IVAN program. It's a community-based environmental enforcement monitoring system. And I think that could be a space that could be interesting to bring in the climate assessment team and present to those groups. And we can sort of be that liaison there and facilitate that. And I think also there's sort of building on the last agenda item of sort of best practices and lessons learned. It sounds like there's really a lot of great lessons that you all probably have from the experience that you've been doing with the participatory research and like community informed policy making that would be really beneficial to make sure that those lessons are shared with the broader state team. And I think especially the engagement with tribes in particular, that is of a lot of value, I think, to the broader state team. As I mentioned previously, too, Cali PA will be undertaking the disadvantaged communities designation process. So perhaps there's an opportunity there to weave in some cross-pollination of at least sharing out what will be coming from LCI. And so we can discuss sort of that in the future. And then lastly, as you know, but I think as most people here know, the California Air Resources Board updates the scoping plan for the state of California, and the last one was in 2022, and it's updated every 5 years. So the next one will be in 2027, and the last update to the scoping plan absolutely, references the prior climate assessment. It's so it sort of goes hand in hand of underscoring the importance of the work that we have to and the goals that the statutory requirements that we have to reach carbon neutrality by 2045, and all of the modeling and work that then goes into the scoping plan to actually lay out what the state's plan is to get to that goal. And so having the fifth climate assessment be able to help to inform and underscore the importance of what we know will happen or what we predict will happen, and in our changing climate really, I think is a natural opportunity for this work to meld together. So we really look forward to partnering with you, and please count on us for our support.
And Chair, it looks like Deputy Secretary Schwartz has rejoined. Can we see if her comment comes through again?
Hi, everyone. Sorry about that. I've been having technology issues today, so I've been hesitant to talk. And I will make it quick just in case I get cut out again. But we've been working closely with LCI and SGC, and I had the opportunity to dig into the document, and it's just really, really impressive. And it just made me so proud, I think, in this moment when the federal government is really kind of unwinding a lot of the climate work to see that California is still pushing forward on this. So, I think this is a really exciting opportunity to share wisdom at the summit. So thank you very much.
Great. Senior Housing Coordinator Jackson.
Thank you. Hi. Thank you for your presentation. I did get the opportunity to review some of the housing and Is this good now? Sorry. Let me get closer. I said thank you for the presentation. I got the opportunity to review some of the housing and transportation content already, and I was very impressed, like Secretary Schwartz said, at the breadth and scope of the information in there, so that's great. Our core four priorities at CALSA are safety, equity, climate action, and economic prosperity. So prioritizing information to understand climate impacts on disadvantaged communities and economic prosperity is very important to us. As we assess the impacts and think about the rollout of this work, CALSA hopes we can keep in mind implementation and opportunity aspects of how we react to the information and apply it to our future. For example, we're interested in quantifying or assessing green job opportunities and other adaptation innovations to make our transportation infrastructure most resilient. And additionally, like in terms of partnering, as the co-lead of the Housing and Transportation Work Group with BCSH, we would like to continue working with our agency and stakeholder partners on how we better achieve our climate goals through land use decisions. And that's also another thing we work on. We're leaders of the Sustainable Communities Task Force, and so we'd love to connect with you on that and integrate your findings into ultimately our recommendations in that group as well. So thank you.
Great. Secretary Moss.
Thank you. I too echo my thanks for the report and just all of the planning that you all have been doing over the many iterations of this assessment. Just a couple of thoughts around, we spend a lot of our time talking about climate impacts, and it's really important to make sure that we're doing that in a way that the public can understand. So really thinking about how do we make sure we are providing the data, but that the data is digestible and understandable to folks, that it then induces different behaviors in terms of reaching our community climate goals and recognizing those impacts. I remember many years ago when I was working at Spur and somebody showed me a map of the Bay Area, and Alameda was like underwater. And I was like, obviously, I'm never buying a house in Alameda. And although that map was looking at a 40-year trajectory, I think it's important for us to understand like that that reality of all of the climate impacts that you've been talking about is real and scary for folks. And so how do we help folks understand what the data is saying and what it's not, and what we can do both in the short run and in the long run? I think we want to have a sense of urgency around this assessment. There are unhoused people in our communities who are impacted by climate change right now. And so what do we need to be doing in terms of mitigations and all of the things that are happening across state government that affect people in real time, while also taking into account all of the longer term planning and strategy that this assessment is looking at. So I think if we can, we'd love to work with you on thinking through whether that shows up in the storytelling, whether or not that shows up in some of the work we've done around plain language and making sure that how we share this kind of information with the public is accessible, I think could be really helpful. And then just lastly, I'm sure you all are thinking about, we've done a lot of work around dashboards and accessibility and transparency of our data. And I think that that could also be a resource in both people understanding what you're communicating, but then buying in. Thank you.
Great. Secretary Moss stole my comment around how do we communicate, which I know you have very thoroughly have been thinking about that. When you showed the slide of who's working on it, when I saw Special Advisor Guido, I was hoping that was one of those two kids in the picture that was the special advisor. The reason I say that is twofold. One, at the end of the day, it's those two kids who are going to be the most impacted 20, 30, 40 years from now. And then two, perhaps they could be part of the storyteller as you go out and as we go out and engage people. They can understand it. I think parents can understand it as well. So have that frame of reference potentially as part of our outreach, how much we can get kids engaged as part of that process. But incredible work. I'm also curious how many pages the documents will have. You don't have to tell me that now. Lots of pictures. Yeah. Public Member Capretz. You are muted, I think.
Yes, I was. Sorry about that. I just said congratulations on an incredible comprehensive report, and I'm always impressed. It's always an incredible group of people who work on this. Just piggybacking a little bit on like just reality checking, how climate issues are landing on the ground. Because that's all my organization does is work on the ground and locally in politics. And, I don't know the perfect mechanism to figure this out, but I wonder if you all could integrate, it could be through the next one, obviously, it's too late in the game for this one, but like, what is the community thinking about climate? And like because, we get polls, we get access to information a lot from different political stakeholders. And, the only thing people want to talk about is affordability right now. Like cost of living, there's nothing we cannot touch. Anything we're proposing on a policy level has to be framed as an affordability solution. And I think that's fine because that's where you have to meet people where they are. That's where they're at. So I just think the state should be mindful about like, is our work actually connecting with the people on the ground? Not only how we communicate it, but are we actually responding to what their needs are? And so, and I know it's a dance. And again, I don't have the magic answer. I don't pretend to, but if you talk to people on the ground, I think they would tell you, unless they're trying to get money from the state and they don't want to tell you, but like it's hard to get a listening audience on this stuff when people are suffering and struggling so much just to pay the bills. And so I just kind of, I just throw that out there. Again, it's easy for me to say because I'm not responsible for the state, but I just as kind of somewhat of a grounding exercise of just making sure how the state is framing and thinking through all these issues, can people hear it just based on what lived experience they're having right now? And I guess I would argue that's what we see on the ground is that unless we're talking about how we're going to slash their utility bill, like that's what they want to hear from us. And so just, letting you know kind of what's going on in the grassroots. But, as usual, extraordinary work. I know you all are extremely talented, capable, going on, going to do incredible things in this world. So thank you. And just a reminder about where, meeting people where they're at. Thanks.
Yeah, I think that's a very, very important comment. It touches about also the storytelling, but who's telling it as well and how they're telling it. I remember one of our early SGC site tours, I think it was Watts, was really incredible. Some of you who were here, I think Nicole, you were there as well. The 75-year-old woman volunteered to walk us through her house so we can see the SGC invested energy retrofit for her house, LED lights. Not once, when she was proudly walking us through her room, she never once mentioned how much carbon footprint she is reduced, but she continuously mentioned how much her monthly bill came down, right? That was her frame of reference because of the work. Has nothing to do about greenhouse gas reduction, all of that stuff. So those are really important components. The 75-year-old or the 5-year-old can speak to relevant impact or framing that they have. So I think those are really important components of the communications. Otherwise, it becomes, as you know, a mental exercise. So I think those are important feedback. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Anyone else from council? Again, Ilya, an incredible work. I know thousands of people worked on this, but I can't believe single-pointedly coordinating this is not an easy task. And I know what goes on a daily basis, but really thank you to you and your team to get to this point, and really encourage my colleagues for the October dates. I think that those 2 days of engagement and your participation in it as well is going to be, I think, what team is going to be working on from now until that event. So thank you for your work. With that, do we have any public comments?
No public comment for this item. Yeah, thank you.
Great. We now move to item 9, which is an informational item on the Agricultural Land Equity Task Force report entitled Advancing Agricultural Land Equity in California, and submitted to the California Legislature for their consideration in December of last year. I would like to invite Camille Frazier, Program Manager for the Agricultural Land Equity Initiative, to introduce the rest of the task force members and also to present the item. Camille, so you're getting ready? Perfect.
We're just doing a quick seating change up here, so bear with us.
No. There we are. Thank you, Chair Safa, and thank you for having us all here today. I'm very pleased to be kicking off the presentation about the California Agricultural Land Equity Task Force's work. My name is Camille Frazier. I'm the program manager that worked to administer this body, and I'm joined by a very fantastic staff team at SGC under the leadership of Sean Kennedy. Tessa Salzman is in the audience, Caleb Swanson also here, and with facilitation support, fantastic facilitation support from Megan Wiley at Sac State, who is also here in the room with us today. I'm going to actually ask task force members to each briefly introduce themselves. Our speakers are here sitting with you, and we also have additional task force members in the audience. So first, let's go down the line and let our presenters briefly introduce themselves, and then I'll call our other task force members up just to the podium right here for brief introductions. So please, Chair Hawkins.
Thank you all for listening to our presentation today and for the opportunity to speak and share the amazing work that we've done together. My name is Nelson Hawkins. It's a pleasure to meet you all. I have the privileged opportunity to be the elected chair of this task force and to fulfill that role over the course of our time together. I also show up to this work as the farmer founder of We Grow Farms. We cultivate seasonal, diversified, and culturally meaningful produce on a small scale in the Yolo County area in urban and rural environments. And I also show up as the co-founder of the Ujamaa Farmer Collective, and we exist to fulfill the mission of supporting access to resources for the success of Black farmers in the greater Sacramento region, this region. And pleasure to meet you all. I'll pass it to our vice chair.
Hauka, Hauka, Enya Emily Bergenio Nechuhi, Matel Kunan Kopai, Nupum Sinau Katun Kopai, Enya Churchech Chesaper, or excuse me, Enya McKenue, Pipa Napum Hilsmia McKenue. Enya Churchech Chesaper Napum Mohe. So I have to introduce my family before I introduce my work. What I mentioned was in the language Ipaya, or the northern dialect of the Kumeyaay language, which is in San Diego area, northern Baja, California, Mexico. I introduced myself. I said, hello, my name is Emily Bergenio. I'm from the Esquinon village, also known as the Ipai Nation of Santa Isabel, where I'm a tribal enrolled citizen. We're located actually in North County, San Diego, in the mountains between 3,000 and 5,000 elevation. I'm also from the Sinyakwatun village, which is the Manzanita Band of the Kumeyaay Nation on my father's side, and that's located in East County, San Diego in the higher desert. I mentioned my families, Pipa and Hilmiup. Those are my clans, and that's why I'm here today. They brought me here. I also mentioned the Churchech Chesaper Napum Matmoche, the strong-hearted work I carry with me, no matter what role I'm in, no matter what project I'm working on, I always carry my strong heart with me. And then I also mentioned the philosophy of Matmoche, or love of the land, in which I was raised in. And I choose to introduce myself in our traditional language because, as you can tell, I'm still learning. It's been systemically erased from the area, or attempted to be erased, I should say, from the area. And we are thankfully, through my mentors, revitalizing that language. And yeah, I just wanted to introduce myself in that way. And it's been an honor and privilege to serve as the vice chair for the task force, alongside SGC staff and Megan. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Dorian Payan. I'm a child of farm workers, grandchild of braceros, and relative to all land stewards. I am also with the Sustainable Economies Law Center, a staff attorney there. Pleasure to be with y'all.
Hello, everybody. My name is Leah Schwartzman. I am the Senior Program Manager for the Equity and Conservation on Working Lands Department at California FarmLink. We are a nonprofit organization and a community development financial institution that works with farmers, ranchers, and fishers throughout the state of California, and it's been a pleasure to serve on the task force.
Hi, my name is Nathaniel Brown, farmer, founder of Brown Sugar Farm right here in Sacramento County, from Citrus Heights, born and raised here in Sacramento. So it's been really great to just sit in on something right here. Also co-founder of Ujamaa Farmer Collective, working to secure resources for Black farmers in the greater Sacramento region with the Chair Nelson Hawkins. And yeah, just thank you for being able to set forth this work that we've been able to do this last 2 years.
Hi everyone, my name is Qi Zhou. I am the Community Engagement and Collaboration Program Manager at California Association of Resource Conservation District. We are a statewide organization for our 97 local resource conservation districts in the California. And I'm also sitting on the California Department of Food and Agriculture BIPOC Advisory Committee. And because of my cultural background and my language skills and my geographically, I'm located in Santa Clara County. So I'm deeply connected with the Asian farmers, 175 Asian farmers in that county. So thank you.
Hi, good afternoon, folks. My name is Thea Rittenhouse. I'm the Farm Equity Advisor and Tribal Liaison at the Department of Food and Agriculture, also a member of the Land Equity Task Force, and it's my pleasure to be here today, and I look forward to the presentation.
Hide Hoyoshnim Darlene Franco, not the Inyana Wukchumni. I am the tribal chairperson for the Wukchumni Tribal Council, and I am also a task force member that's worked on this project for the last 2 years. And my tribe is not federally recognized. However, because of the 1852 treaties in the state of California, I am recognized as an individual by the federal government, by the BIA. So I know it's confusing, but I think it's important to bring that up since the topics that we've talked about today. I am also the founder of Wukchumni Farms, where we, during the pandemic, we discovered, I guess, or realized that we need to be more food sovereign, that we need to grow our own food, take care of our families, and go back to the way things used to be. So we have been able to grow food, grow medicinals, plants, traditional foods, and basketry materials. And so we have established that there in Visalia, California. Thank you.
Thank you all. As you can tell, there is a really amazing array of perspectives on this body, in addition to other members who weren't able to join us here today. So I'm going to begin, if you'll please move us to the next slide, just with a brief overview of the task force, how it was established, what it is, and then I will pass it to the task force members to continue the presentation. So the California Agricultural Land Equity Task Force was established by the legislature in the 2022 Budget Act as an independent body that was obligated to develop recommendations on how to equitably increase access to agricultural land for food production and traditional tribal agricultural uses. And in that bill, it was established that task force members would be appointed by the Strategic Growth Council and that the work would be administered by SGC, hence the team of staff that have been supporting this work. The obligation was for this body to deliver its final report to the governor and legislature by January 1st, 2026, and they successfully completed that task and delivered the report in December. And it's important to note that while the Strategic Growth Council administered this body and this work, it is an independent body and it maintained all final decision-making control over the contents of its report. Next slide, please. So there was a fantastic amount of work that went into the creation of this report. This is a Bagley-Keene Open Meetings Act compliant body. You all know very well what that means, but it means all of their work, their meetings, their materials were accessible to the public. In addition to just having their process be accessible, the task force from the very beginning made a central core tenet of their process, community engagement. And that included a wide range of multilingual activities. You can see there were 13 hybrid meetings and 33 virtual subcommittee meetings. You have this extensive community engagement process that involved a survey and involved guest speakers, site visits across the state, engagement sessions, and of course, public comment. And I'll note just as one example for the type of tribal engagement that was conducted by this task force, they held 3 tribal engagement sessions with over 40 participants and also conducted 2 one-on-one meetings with California Native American tribes, just as one piece of the kind of tailored and targeted outreach that this group conducted. In addition, the task force sought technical guidance where needed to complement their existing expertise, which, as I'm sure you all know from their introductions, was extensive. That included a 9-member advisory committee and also an interagency review process. So thanks to you and your staff for supporting that process. Noting that all of that guidance was taken into consideration by the task force, but again, the task force did maintain decision-making control over their report. Next slide, please. So these are the primary components of the report that are going to serve as the basis for the presentation today. Task force members are going to share some key messages from those first sections, providing the storytelling, the historical context, and then they'll transition to a brief, there's a lot to say, but a brief overview of those recommendations sections. You can see them listed there. It's important to note as we begin this presentation that as mandated, they've developed policy recommendations based on the 2 years of extremely extensive work that they conducted. So you'll see a lot of different pathways to advancing equitable access to ag land that will require sort of further consultation, guidance, and to move toward implementation. So I will please now pass it to Chair Hawkins.
Thanks, Camille. California is facing an agricultural land equity crisis. Historical discrimination and ongoing patterns of exclusion have led to disparities in land ownership. Today, 82% of farmland in California is owned by producers who identify as white. California lost roughly 7,000 farms from 2017 to 2022. The total farmland decreased by 300,000 acres, mostly due to urban development. Most losses were among small farms, while the number of large farms increased. So what does this mean? This means that agricultural land is becoming more consolidated. As this image shows on the screen, 4.6% of California's producers own almost half of the state's cropland. I'll say that one more time. Less than 5% of California's producers own almost half of the state's cropland. Not only that, this also means that speculative investments in agricultural land by institutional investors have risen substantially in recent years, making it harder for producers and tribal land stewards to compete in the land market. Advancing agricultural land equity benefits all Californians. Ensuring equitable land access and tenure for California's diverse farmers, ranchers, indigenous land stewards means a more resilient, just, and diverse food system. Agriculture is the cornerstone of California's economy. The California Jobs First State Economic Blueprint calls for strengthening agricultural production in 9 of California's 13 regions. The health and preservation of California's agricultural land is critical to realizing the state's climate and environmental protection goals. Smaller operations tend to have greater both crop and non-crop biodiversity, and this ensures long-term stewardship that creates more resilient economies and ecosystems. Next slide, please. The task force arrived at this definition on the screen after many conversations among members and after listening to priority communities. As it reads, agricultural land equity exists when priority producers and tribal land stewards have access to secure, affordable, and viable land for the stewardship and cultivation of food, fiber, medicine, and cultural resources without systemic barriers, without disparities, or without exploitation. As this definition shows, agricultural land equity is not about taking land away from some to give to others, despite what the so-called leadership of our federal administration claims, or maybe some of these sensationalist media outlets say. Agricultural land equity is actually about ensuring those who have been historically excluded and who continue to be excluded are afforded the same opportunities as everybody else. Note that this expansive definition of agriculture includes diverse production systems and traditional ecological knowledge. We define priority producers and tribal land stewards as those who have been historically and systematically excluded from land ownership and secure tenure for agricultural and traditional tribal uses. It is inclusive of individuals who meet the state's definition of socially disadvantaged farmers and ranchers and the federal definition of underserved producers, which includes beginning and veteran farmers as well and ranchers as well. And I will pass it to our Vice Chair, Emily, for the next slide.
I also want to reflect, excuse me. Thank you. I also want to reflect, as it was mentioned, not all of our task members, force members are here today, but this report, the recommendations definitely reflect what we were able to unify on. As you may understand, with the reporting, research, meetings, discussions, there can be those conflicts that arise, but this special group of people coming from each corner of the state, we were able to come together, and ultimately we were called upon from the state to provide a report, to include the voices that it has, and to do our best, and that's what we did. These recommendations, they are a starting point. They're not the finish point. And they are definitely, like the other reports mentioned, there are some gaps. So we wanted to provide a starting point, but ultimately what I want to reflect on what Chairman was saying, agricultural, this report is a magnifying glass, not a target. No one's being targeted here. What we're doing is amplifying the rich culture, history, often hard history, but also the current experience, because it is our history that brings us to our current experience, and together we can move forward to do better. And through these recommendations, we know we can do better together. It's up to the state to really reflect on what we put in the report. Ultimately, number one, and during yesterday's meeting, it was asked, is the sequence of the report or the recommendations significant? And it is. And that's because we wanted to amplify what has been happening since statehood has began, which is genocide of not only the people, but the land. Because in order to have the land, you have to understand, you have to have the people who are from it, who care for it, and who understand it, not just who is entitled to it. So prioritizing tribal stewardship, and I really appreciate Chairman's remarks earlier about tribal stewardship, the traditional ecological knowledge being, that key element of climate adaptation, because we are the blueprint. We work with the land because we are the land, and kumiai, land, and body are the same words because that's significant of how we were created with the clay. So I really want to reflect what was poured into this report, because it is the advocacy that has been happening for many generations, for many years, right? These recommendations are nothing new. These are something we believe in, and it's up to the decision makers to actually apply it. So I implore not just the council, but state leaders and definitely federal leaders to not just glance at this report, but to understand it. It's not a target. It's a magnifying glass, if anything. Next, yes. And by prioritizing tribal stewardship, that'll only benefit everybody. The land return, that includes not just the physical land return, but that's also what I mentioned earlier, the return of our language, the return of our stories, and even ultimately the return of our ancestors that are in the land, embedded in the land. I just wanted to come here today to really reflect the need to respect and understand tribal sovereignty through the recommendation of number 1. It's really within the meat that you can understand these recommendations. So I understand, I sit on many councils myself for my communities. So I understand if you can't read the full report, and that's why we did have the general summary, because we appreciate your time and energy. And yeah, I just know this will, like my brother taught me, when you do something, when you pour into it, it creates a ripple. So I'm intrigued what this will ripple out into. I'm intrigued at the other reports previously presented will ripple out to. But it is that action, right, that is needed in order to ripple. So thank you all for hearing what I had to say. And I really appreciate, the time, energy that was put into this. There was, a headache or two along the way, but ultimately we were unified. And I think that's ultimately why it worked. So thank you.
Next slide, please. So Section 2 is designed to address the enduring legacy of historical harms such as land theft and forced labor.
Can I ask you the mic? Thanks. Get the mic closer. Yeah, I can't hear you.
So similar to Section 1, Section 2 is designed to address the enduring legacy of historical harms such as land theft and forced labor, which continue to shape who can securely own or access agricultural land today. The high cost of land and systemic barriers to financing are critical, recurring challenges we heard repeatedly throughout the work of the task force. For example, farmers at an engagement session with Kern County Black Farmers Association shared powerful stories of systemic exclusion. They stressed the urgent need for equitable financing, specialized legal and technical assistance to resolve issues like land titles, insecure leases, and water rights, and support for intergenerational land transfer. The recommendations in this section would provide targeted funding, expand access to tailored financial and technical assistance, and improve program effectiveness through strong collaboration and accountability. The section offers a robust package of solutions, including proven models from other states like Iowa's Aggie Bonds, several examples of low-interest loan programs and tax incentives. Also groundbreaking new ideas for California to pilot, such as the Restorative Land Fund, and strategic modifications to existing programs like the California Organized Investment Network, or COIN, and additional funds for technical assistance providers to maximize their impact. Next slide, please. So the land equity crisis is increasingly driven by the consolidation of agricultural land and resources like groundwater. This is a significant issue with national attention, but it's especially dire in California, where land and water resources are becoming scarce and expensive. In Fresno County, one of the most productive agricultural regions in the country, the situation is especially severe, with recent research showing that the largest 10% of owners control 73% of the farmland. When small and mid-sized farms are replaced by fewer, larger operations, rural communities lose out. In addition to economic losses, consolidated ag land also has negative social, environmental, and health consequences that impact local food systems and community resilience. Institutional investors and private equity firms have been treating California's agricultural land as a mere investment product. This drives up land prices. It creates a near impassable barrier for small and beginning farmers at a time when we need more farmers entering the field. As one presenter noted, this trend also leads to absentee landlords who divert wealth away from farm worker communities and do not take an active role in land stewardship. To ensure that farmland is affordable and accessible to those who work it, the task force recommends a multi-pronged approach to secure, transparent, and fair land markets. Limit speculative investment, prioritize purchase opportunities for farmers, ranchers, and tribal land stewards, support retirement security, and monitor market trends for transparency. Agricultural land consolidation is an issue that is only ramping up, and it will continue to worsen without intervention.
Next slide, please. So California is losing agricultural land at an alarming rate, approximately 1 square mile per week, with prime farmland seeing the highest rate of decrease. Special shout out to the Department of Conservation for having that GIS technology show us where our prime farmland is in the state of California. So to ensure the long-term viability of California agriculture, agricultural land must be protected and managed for ecological, social, and cultural benefits. Conservation easements are not always designed in ways that meet the needs of California's producers and tribal land stewards. And I think this is important, especially to know, seen as it forms a part of the strategy for our 30 to 30 initiative. So as one example, a technical assistance provider shared, many vineyard owners are interested in conservation easements, but they're determined by limits on how much land can be used for structures. More landowners would utilize conservation easements if they didn't limit their ability to build, renovate, or expand structures that are needed for their agricultural operations, including farm worker housing. The recommendations in this section called for statewide planning and program improvements that will preserve agricultural land while meeting the needs of California's farmers, ranchers, and tribal land stewards, ensuring they effectively steward the state's invaluable ag lands into the future. Next slide, please. So this is prioritizing and protecting secure land tenure. Land access is not enough to achieve agricultural land equity. It also requires stable and secure land tenure. The task force identified 3 major barriers to land tenure. So 1 was short-term, insecure, or otherwise unfavorable lease agreements. 2 was burdensome policies and regulations. And 3 was being able to challenge zoning codes and permitting processing, or the existence of challenging zoning codes and permitting processes. So one example, a farming family in Gilroy shared that their challenges with their leased property were zoning restrictions that prevented them from living on site and making the money that they needed to make on the land. They were forced to invest in land that they don't own, like fixing and having to fix faulty wiring, for example, on the land. So having to take on the improvements on that land without having the secure tenure themselves. The recommendations in this section would address these and related challenges by establishing a framework for fair and effective landowner-tenant relationships, strengthening institutional support for farmers, ranchers, and tribal land stewards, and navigating complicated zoning and regulatory processes, addressing policy and regulatory burdens that disproportionately fall on small and underserved farmers, and encouraging local zoning and land use practices that promote secure tenure and stewardship. And finally, recommendation 6 is supporting urban agriculture, which is where many of us who have done land stewardship get first cut their teeth in land stewardship. So I think it's so important to continue to have urban agriculture. Urban agriculture provides unique opportunities to advance agricultural land equity. The task force identified major barriers to urban agriculture, including exclusion from most existing grant, loan, and incentive programs that exist currently, and also unfavorable zoning restrictions. Seems to be a theme here. Participants at an urban ag-focused engagement session shared how difficult it can be to access urban spaces if there isn't an advocate who sees a role that ag can play in urban greening projects like parks and other city properties. Often urban ag can be stuck in between neither eligible for agriculture-focused funding and programs nor urban ones. So between a rock and a hard place. If implemented, these recommendations in this section would provide meaningful pathways for urban growers to obtain stable, long-term access to urban land and the resources needed to steward it effectively. I'll pass it back over to Chair Nelson.
Thanks. Thank you, Dorian. So moving forward, we recognize that this work continues, and this is truly the beginning to reach our goals. Task force members will share their report widely, and we encourage others to do the same. Effective implementation will require centering priority producers and tribal land stewards, and Indigenous communities in developing effective tracking and evaluation tools. I personally am honored to serve on this task force alongside a solid group of thoughtful, committed, and powerful thought leaders embedded in the communities who need the most support. I uplift the commitment and contributions of my fellow task force members, SGC staff, our facilitator, our advisory committee, interagency reviewers, and the numerous Indigenous and tribal leaders, farmers, ranchers, and land stewards who actively engage with, that we actively engage with throughout the state over the past 2.5 years. To ground truth these recommendations as we enter the next chapter in advancing agricultural land equity in our great state of California. Everyone has a part to play in this next phase, and we appreciate the opportunity to share our work with you. Thank you for listening to our presentation, and we are happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Camille, and thank you for the task force members. What an incredible diversity of views, but also that reflected in what is contained in so far in the recommendation, and really appreciate your work. We'll have Justin one more time reminder on the public comments. We'll have council discussion followed by public comments after that. Justin.
Great. If members of the public would like to comment on this item, please submit a public comment card at the front table. To make virtual public comment, please visit sgc.ca.gov/meetings-events/council and complete the public comment form.
Great. Thanks. And we'll open it up to council discussion. Deputy Secretary Jameson.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for the presentation. I wanted to say, thank you to the task force for the report. We really appreciate it. And even more than that, I appreciate how much time and dedication you spent putting into this. You spent 2 years. You all have other jobs, and in many cases more than one other job, and you also have tons of other volunteer positions that you do. So just can't thank you enough for yet another effort that was really a big lift too. I also want to say thank you very much to the SGC staff. You all also put in so much time and just having insight into the logistics of running public meetings and how many of them you did, and that alone is just really impressive. So thank you for seeing this through and facilitating this for the task force. So I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thanks. Deputy Secretary Schwartz.
I also just, want to heap more thanks and praise on the staff and the committee that worked on this for 2.5 years. I mean, it's clear there's a lot of passion and thought and work that went into this. So just deeply, deeply grateful and looking forward to, how meaningful this is going to be for folks across California. So thank you.
Anyone else?
I was going to save my thank yous for the next item too, but I'll also just share my appreciation. This is very incredible, and just appreciate again the voices and the how you approached this work and the recommendations that you put forward. And we are in the opportunity to be in these seats unknown past 10 months from now, but I think what's helpful too is that you're as with many recommendations, setting course to say these are you have just specific recommendations for government. You have that again are here for reference now and into the future. And so just again appreciate the thought and time you have spent. 2 years is a long time to commit to anything, and just really shows the importance to who you are representing and what you're doing in this work. So just tremendous appreciation for all of you in the efforts that you put forth.
Any other comments, Deputy Secretary Zat?
Yeah, well, I will also echo and was going to give my thanks at the next item, which I might do as well. But I guess just since we have the opportunity to maybe ask questions, I'm curious to hear from you all of what was something in the process over the past 2 years of working on this that surprised you, something that maybe you weren't expecting really coming into this, and then, or also if there was something that was like a really something really enjoyable about it, or sort of a bright spot in this work. I'd be curious to know what you enjoyed about this process.
There's two things that I learned. The first, thanks to Task Force member Doria, learning about not, because I'm only aware of the California missions enslavement that happened, but I wasn't aware of the African American enslavement that was happening here. So I did learn that because I definitely didn't learn it in school. It's not in the books. Where I'm at. And, really just taking away the stories. The diversity of the state is incredible. Um, you know, and for myself, really connecting not just with tribal communities, but there is that cultural exchange that does occur. And I was able to happen, with each community that I visited. So that's really meaningful work, and it goes beyond, the responsibilities that the task force had. It's beyond engagement, right? It's humanness. So that's what was important for me.
What comes to mind for me, and I know it's something that y'all have to deal with, and it's just a process in these public meetings, but the Bagley Keene elephant in the room,
Is that the bright spot?
was not something that I anticipated being like a barrier for us to communicate and to have a sense of suspicion or a sense of like a barrier for us to work outside the task force. Of course, as we're showing up in these meetings themselves, and there's good reasons for great reasons and a necessity to have these Bagley Keene requirements for ethics and everything. But it seemed like we're so overlapping in our work across the state of California as we show up in our individual and the organizations and the work that we represent on our own, that there's so much power that we can build together outside of the task force. And it seemed like there was a hesitancy to do so because of Bagley Keene, even just doing it outside. So that was something just based on process that I didn't expect. As I learned as we move forward. One thing that I want to uplift is just how people showed up. We mentioned this yesterday in our reflections in our last meeting, and a lot of times those that have suffered the traumatic experience of land-based oppression specifically, and especially from the state or from the government, are hesitant, and they're going to be shy. They're going to shy away from this process. They're not going to feel comfortable for good reasons to be sharing their experiences or being open to being vulnerable and really ground truthing the realities on the land and the histories and the painful experiences. And the way that we showed up, people we're approachable because of the work that we do individually and how we show up and the power that we hold collectively and covering all the bases in California, that people really showed up across the state whenever we had a conference, whenever we held a workshop, whenever we held a listening session in any region throughout the state of California, like almost standing room only every single time. Once people caught on, and it really reflects like the hunger and desire and need that these recommendations hold. And we can go another 2.5 years, really. We just got started, I know it's like a thick book, but whenever you got a late night and you can just skim through it.
How many pages?
Get through. 100. Yeah, there we go. 170. Okay.
174.
It's a nice nightly read, No. That's what comes to mind for me.
Thank you. Thanks for sharing those reflections.
I can't say that I was surprised, but the coalition that we build as a task force is a wonderful outcome of this. This state is so beautiful and diverse, and we each were pulled from different regions and different specialties within kind of this large blanket that is the topic around land equity. And so bringing us all together to realize that we all have been working from our own silos on this really challenging and incredible topic, I think that I think that we will continue to kind of build coalition around this as a task force outside of Bagley-Keene restrictions. But I think that that also speaks to the diversity of the recommendations that we put forward. You won't see a single silver bullet in here, and there's a reason for that. California is a vast state with a lot of different approaches that will work across the state. So I think that really reflecting on how each of these recommendations is powerful on its own, but together there are synergies to be built in bringing these different recommendations together, whether it's combining a farmer pension fund and allowing a farmer to retire comfortably without needing to sell equity in their land, with lowered interest rate loans or down payment assistance grants that allow a farmer to come in, and then tax incentives that allow both parties to kind of benefit from an intergenerational transfer. Like, these different tools that we've put into these different sections together will really create a picture that allows us to find the opportunity that we're about to see in the largest generational wealth transfer that this nation has ever seen. Over the next 10 years, we're going to see land and wealth transferred at we've never seen before. So this is an opportunity to ensure that that transfer of land we take that opportunity. We can see two things, right? It can either lead to additional land consolidation, or we can actually move the needle on land equity and see land in the hands of primary producers across the state who are going to steward the lands, lead to sustainable food systems, and build communities. So, thank you.
Thank you.
I'll quickly finish by saying I really appreciated learning how each state agency really wants to do better, really wants to continue moving the well-being of the state forward. And having that dance of like bringing maybe recommendations or to the agency without also bringing the ability or the sort of process of expanding capacity is quite a dance sometimes. So if you tell a state agency to do more without also offering the capacity, it gets a little challenging. And so that was a really big learning for me, is just, how do we push the state to do better while also offering those avenues for capacity building. And on that note, I mean, I was just really grateful that we're using state resources to develop a forum like this, to have important conversations like this one. And that's one piece of gratitude that I carried away with,
Anyone else? Deputy Housing Coordinator Jackson.
Thank you. Yeah, I just want to take the time to formally thank you for engaging in this process. 2 years is a long time. I know I've never met a sustainable farmer that wasn't also like deeply embedded in their community. So I know you're very busy. And yeah, it's important to have these recommendations. They help me do my job better. So I just really thank you. And I think one point that was very clear from the presentation is food and really sustainable farming is this like portal connecting Californians to land and their heritage. And without that, we lose that. So it's really necessary work. So thank you.
Anyone else? Again, incredible work, and really appreciate what you've put into this work. Any public comments?
We do have quite a few comments here. So I'll read out first the first three names for in-person public comment. And if you could line up here at the podium, that will be Marissa Raya, Darlene Franco, and Thea Rittenhouse. And then Marisa, if you would like to begin your comment. Each speaker will have 2 minutes to speak. And if anyone needs translation, then that's available, but it would increase your time to 4 minutes.
Hello, everyone. I'm Marissa Raya from UC Davis. I'm honored to have been an advisor supporting the task force and came here today to celebrate their groundbreaking work. Across the country, there have been over 50 reports addressing ag land equity as a national issue, but to the extent of my knowledge, this is the only public body that was directed by a state to engage tribes and small farmers on defining what equitable land access means for the state. California has had important reparative public processes for both Black and Native Californians, and this task force is really remarkable for integrating those perspectives into a very inclusive approach to land equity and affordability that happens to align with the economics of climate-smart agriculture. As a former regional and local government policy implementer, I want to highlight this as a leadership opportunity and talk about how important the Strategic Growth Council is in carrying this work forward. In 2008, when the Strategic Growth Council formed, I was working with Bay Area governments to define urban displacement as an equity issue tied to transit investments, climate, and land use. And SGC centers this equity definition and the importance of community leadership in its grant-making programs like TCC. I wrote that grant section for Oakland's successful Transformative Climate Communities grant. So I know that SGC can direct public investment into community ownership and into equitable economic development. I do think that the state of California does not leverage its climate and other infrastructural investments enough into a comparable equity definition and vision for rural community economic development anchored by tribal stewardship and small and regenerative farms. My research at UC Davis shows that the California climate investments, despite progress since 2020, have been underinvested in disadvantaged farmers, even towards maintaining the status quo. So I want to offer that this is an equitable rural economic development strategy that you're receiving today, and encourage you to take it seriously and instruct staff to share their findings with legislators and state departments, particularly those that handle public lands and grant funding. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll hear from Darlene Franco next.
Thank you. There's a lot of information in this report, and I'm here to express to you what you may not read in that report, but what's in my heart. So the first priority is to prioritize tribal stewardship and land return. What is agriculture? Agri, meaning growing, farming, working with the earth, and culture is customs, a way of life. So traditionally, that's what we do, agriculture, or traditional ecological knowledge using our TEK. My people were created in what is now called Tulare County and the Kauai watershed, which used to lead to the Tulare Lake. All the landscape has changed now. It's farmland now. Our instructions were to live life by living in rhythm with the land. We take care of the land and the environment, and it takes care of us. But over time, when colonization happened and land started to be owned by what we thought were visitors, we could no longer steward the land. My grandpa's hunting was cut off by fences, and the animals went into hiding because they weren't free either. My grandmas could no longer tend and gather throughout the seasons for food, medicines, and basketry materials. Our lives were changed forever. We continued to steward where we could, which often meant climbing through fences. As a child, I didn't realize that I was breaking the law, but I was following the laws of my grandma. My grandma said she was supposed to go there, she was supposed to tend these plants, she was supposed to gather these plants. So she was following her teachings, and those teachings she was passing on to me. So that's what I thought was important. We can't do that anymore without being fined or jailed. So, and this is not old history. This has happened in our lifetime. We have created Wukchumni Farms. Oh man, I'm trying to get through this. And during the pandemic, we created it so that we don't have land that we own. So we are borrowing land and we are teaching our next generations. So I encourage you to take what's important in this report that we gave you and to help us with our future generations to continue our life ways, our culture, and our teachings. And our people work with our youth on healing our youth to heal our future. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll hear next from Thea Rittenhouse.
Good afternoon. So I just wanted to take a minute, 2 minutes to be exact. Oftentimes we say, thanks to the support of SGC, et cetera. And I think that I wanted to make sure that we take a brief moment to say that what the staff did here in this circumstance for the last 2.5 years was well beyond support. And it really demonstrated the professionalism and the ability for the state to show up and lead really difficult conversations, and not just lead them, but to be there for everyone when we had to keep things going and have more meetings and really try to get it right. And so Camille, Sean, Caleb, Megan in particular, and Tessa did such a wonderful job at leading this group. And I think you've had a brief moment here to learn about the work that we've done and the wide variety of experiences that we've all had. I really encourage everyone to reach out to us individually after we're no longer task force members to ask questions, to get to know more about what's in this report, because there really is a lot there. And it was an incredible opportunity to serve on this task force. So I really appreciate everyone and their time. Thank you.
Thank you. Can the next 3 in-person speakers please come up? Nathaniel Brown, Jamie Fanus, and Chelsea Gazalik.
I'm going to keep it brief. I just want to thank you all again. My favorite thing to do is tour farms. And like you said earlier, it was a great work to do going up and down the state and being able to connect with, as a farmer, connecting with the farmers and other land stewards that are also struggling with all the same kind of challenges. So I do want to urge Strategic Growth Council to push and implement the things that we already are set up to do in this great state. I personally have been recipient of different grants through CDFA, which has completely changed my farming experience and just the land access and farming experience. I'm also really excited to hear how the Strategic Growth Council will work with the Department of Conservation to advance the Prop 4 climate bond, to improve land access and tenure for socially disadvantaged farmers and ranchers, tribal producers, and land stewards. And I know a lot of the work that we did in these reports can help guide you in that process with the Department of Conservation, which in many ways is not centering the indigenous land stewards and disadvantaged farmers that my fellow colleagues have been speaking to. So again, thanks for putting us on this work, and hopefully these recommendations can be helpful in the future with you all and the Strategic Growth Council to come.
Thank you. Jamie Fanos.
Hi. My name is Jamie Fanus. I'm the Policy and Organizing Director at the Community Alliance with Family Farmers. We represent around 8,000 small and underserved farmers across the state of California. Year after year, land tenure comes up as one of the top challenges that our farming community faces. They deal with the impossible costs of land. They deal with the intense consolidation of the food system, land grabs by corporate entities, you name it, they are dealing with it. Over 3 years ago, CAF and a number of advocates partnered together to advocate for the creation of this task force. because the state is very obviously not addressing land equity. There are less than a handful of programs that really touch land access and land equity, and we needed a real comprehensive set of recommendations, which is what has happened here today. I am really in awe of the fact that they have put together such an incredible report and have put in so much work after 2 years of intensive conversations, as you've learned today. I'm recommending to the council to please direct your staff to review these recommendations and actually implement things that are in this report. You do not need legislative oversight and new bills and new laws to do a lot of what is already here. You have tremendous amount of power, and I'm encouraging you to use that because these task force members have put in the time and effort to provide these recommendations in a way that is really accessible and digestible. The second thing I would urge you is to please direct the SGC staff to go that extra step when we talk about delivering a report, to provide the education, to present these materials to the public, to the legislature, to other agencies. Writing this report is one step to actually educating the community on what is in there, and our legislators on what is in there is critical and a fundamental component of it, especially when we advocated for the creation. That was the hope. So thank you so much and appreciate the time.
Thank you. We'll hear from Chelsea Gazalik next, and if Beth Smoker, Darlene Ruiz, and Ruby Simonson could come up to the podium, that would be great.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak today. My name is Chelsea Gazzillo, and I'm a Senior California Policy Manager for American Farmland Trust. AFT is a national nonprofit organization dedicated to protecting farmland, promoting sound farming practices, and keeping farmers on the land. A core part of our mission is supporting farmers who are seeking land access and those planning for land succession. Through our land access program, both here in California and nationally, we consistently hear that the rising price of farmland and ongoing farm consolidation are making it harder for small and mid-scale producers, especially socially disadvantaged farmers, to access land. So as we heard from many of the speakers, land prices continue to soar, and with the average price of cropland values at nearly $18,000 per acre, the Ag Equity Task Force recommendations being presented here today are a first step in California's need to intervene and support land access opportunities for socially disadvantaged farmers. And we urge the council to take action. In addition to what others have said, and building off of what Jamie mentioned, AFT stands ready to support the council in ensuring that the state's agricultural conservation easement programs and all of the brilliant recommendations that Leah brought up prioritize equitable land access and long-term stewardship. Our California staff welcomes and is ready to be a thought partner, resource, and collaborator on implementing the recommendations in this report. Thank you so much for your time and giving me the opportunity to speak.
Thank you. We'll hear next from Beth Smoker.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Beth Smoker. I'm the policy director with the California Food and Farming Network. We are an organization of 50 members spanning hunger, labor, and farming organizations. The fact that agricultural land tenure is a shared priority across these sectors shows just how far-reaching this issue is. When viable farmland is bought up and concentrated, it affects the entire food system, reducing local food access, weakening small businesses, and even farm workers' livelihoods. The proposals in this report provide a path to address not just land security and land tenure, but multiple issues across our whole food system. I helped advocate for the creation of this task force in response to a gap in conversation, resources, and avenues for land stewards to shape solutions 3 years ago. And it's really, really, truly exciting to see the task force develop a comprehensive set of recommendations that were grounded deeply in community, both in the members of the task force and also the exercises the task force carried out for 2 years, and the robust discussions. I also urge the council, I think I heard a theme today in different parts of the section of like, don't just put something on a shelf. And so just want to reiterate that there are things in this report that can be done now that don't need legislative action or oversight, and encourage us to continue SGC staff. I think they're going to have a lot of free time now, right? To now go educate agency partners and legislative leaders, and do the next big step of this work. So thank you so much.
Thank you. We'll hear next from Darlene Ruiz.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Darlene Ruiz. I am the Land Equity and Access Coordinator as part of the Climate Action and Land Equity Project, based in the UC Cooperative Extension Office in San Diego, but covering Southern California region. And I just want to say that I urge the council to prioritize funding, coordination, and long-term support for implementing the Ag Land Equity Task Force recommendations. These were created to address real barriers faced by underserved farmers and land stewards, and their success depends on sustained action, not just adoption. Given recent federal threats that have already attempted to slow or interfere with this progress, it is essential that California remain aligned with the original intent of these recommendations and accountable to the communities they represent. Your continued leadership is critical to ensuring this work moves forward equitably and without delay. Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry, one moment. Oh, if you could introduce yourself, go ahead. My apologies.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Ruby Simonson. I'm speaking on behalf of First Mother Farms. It's a BIPOC-led land justice initiative here on Maidu and Nisenan territory. Just first off, just congratulations though on just this huge feat. It's really exciting to see something like this bring together really what a lot of us in the community kind of already know through experience, and see it in a formal recommendation. I just want to say that urban agriculture is often celebrated as a pathway for BIPOC farmers to enter rural farming and long-term land stewardship. While urban farming plays an important role in education, food access, and community healing, we need to be honest about the research and lived experience show that urban farming is not a viable pipeline into rural farming in California without structural change. The transition from urban agriculture to rural farming is not gradual, it's a structural cliff. BIPOC farmers are expected to make this leap without affordable land, without secure water, without patient capital, and without access to shared infrastructure. When this transition fails, the burden is placed on individual farmers, then on policies that control land, water, and capital. This is not accidental. California's agriculture system was shaped by land dispossession, racial exclusion, and consolidation, and those dynamics continue today. Farmland prices remain out of reach, water access is increasingly uncertain, especially under SGMA. Infrastructure and capital overwhelmingly favor large and established operations. Urban agriculture is then asked to solve land injustice without land reform. That framing sets BIPOC farmers up for instability, not success. In California, if California is serious about equity in agriculture, the solution is not merely training pipelines into precarious conditions. The solution is structural investment into secure long-term land access, water governance that centers equity, patient, non-extractive capital, and shared infrastructure held in common. BIPOC farmers do not need to be trained harder for a system that is not designed to include them. They need a system that treats land as more than a commodity, water as more than market input, and farming as long-term land stewardship. We urge you to fund access to land, water security, and infrastructure, and to center BIPOC leadership and center BIPOC leadership in shaping agricultural policy. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you. All right, so we'll move to virtual comments now. First I have here is Veronica Mazariegos. Anastasio. I hope that I got that right. Please raise your hand in the Zoom and we'll unmute you.
Great.
Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Great, thank you. Yes, that's correct. Good afternoon. My name is Veronica Mazariegos Anastasio, and I am a farmer and pescadero in San Mateo County on the Central Coast. First of all, I want to express gratitude for the task force members, especially those fellow farmers and land stewards. The recommendations in this report address many of the challenges that I have faced as a farmer. We started our farm, Disa Ranch, 8 years ago and have been farming on year-to-year land leases across 4 different sites. I cannot emphasize enough the instability this creates. It makes it difficult for us to invest in the infrastructure and practices needed for our business to thrive. Small farmers that, like us, are not only stewarding land and resources, but also growing food for our region, need a better land tenure option, especially accessible land acquisition. As farmers, we must aspire to more than barely making a living. Farming can and should be a source of pride, capable of creating meaningful careers and provide for affordable housing for members of our rural community. This is all possible, but only if we have agency over the land we already work so hard to care for. I'll end by saying this. I had strong reservations about the creation of this task force because I feared reaching this exact moment when recommendations would be released and posted on a website, making this council feel accomplished in addressing land access. The good news is that you can show us that you take this report and the challenges it represents seriously by implementing the recommendations you already have the authority to act on, and working across the state government as a catalyst for changes recommended beyond your purview. In doing so, you will make it possible for farmers like us to continue farming and provide hope for the rural community and a new generation of farmers and land stewards, especially at this critical point of land transition. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll hear next from Adam X. If you can raise your hand on the Zoom. Or press *9 if you're calling in by phone.
I'm here.
Okay, there, we can hear you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Adam X, and I'm the CEO of Original Manufacturing Incorporated, but also an advocate and food systems builder based out of Los Angeles. And I just want to take the time now to name the historical nature of this moment. The Agricultural Land Equity Task Force is a well-structured policy document and a formal public acknowledgement that government-sanctioned harms shaped land access in California through disposition, exclusion, and barriers written into law, finance, and land use systems. So this is California's actual opportunity to lead the process of healing from a legacy of slavery, state-sanctioned genocide, and more. So first, I urge the SGC to review and begin implementing the recommendations you already have the authority to act on. Not every recommendation requires new legislation. So there are concrete steps that can move now through administrative practice, program design, funding guidelines, and intra-agency coordination, community engagement structures, and prioritization criteria. If you just wait around for the perfect legislative alignment or the perfect bill, we risk losing the momentum this process has built. So second, I encourage SGC to direct staff to take on ongoing public and internal education role. These recommendations must be understood not only by advocates, but by agency staff, local governments, and legislative leaders through sustained briefings, accessible materials, and continued engagement. So this becomes living infrastructure and not just a document on a shelf. So I encourage the SGC to coalesce with preceding SGC efforts to build coalitions with organizations supporting this work. And third, given national scrutiny and federal rhetoric and legal threats, the HSC should coordinate legal readiness and communications and defense framing grounded in constitutional precedent and administrative authority, a unified public narrative, and a rapid response coordination with coalition partners so the oppositional slander doesn't define this work. So I'll close with what's practical. We don't have to imagine what happens when the state invests in reparative food system infrastructure. We already have examples. Ujama Farmer Collective and Crop LA show what's possible when the state resources support rural and urban land stewardship, food production, economic opportunity. That investment produces resilience, health, jobs, and stability. So literally everybody wins, in spite of what the opposition says. So thank you all for your time.
Thank you. We'll hear next from Berta Magaña, and Berta has requested translation The state offers translation for the 5 most commonly used languages in California. And with previous notification of 72 hours ahead of time, we can offer that with regularity. For today, I can support with translation. So we'll have 4 minutes on the clock here. Berta, hoy yo le puedo apoyar con la traducción. Si puede, por favor, hablar lentamente, claramente y pausar cada 2 o 3 frases, eso me ayudaría mucho. En adelante, si puede levantar la mano en la reunión de Zoom o poner estrella 9. Y tal vez estrella 6 también para desbloquear. Berta, si nos puede oír con estrellita 6, así tal vez podríamos escuchar. O si no, podemos volver para probar otra vez. Yeah? Okay, so we'll give that a moment and then we'll come back. In that case, let's hear next from Sherilyn Benjamin. So same instructions. Sherilyn, if you can raise your hand in the Zoom, or if you're on the phone, *9.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, please go ahead.
Hi, my name is Sherlyn Benjamin, and I'm here on behalf of California FarmLink, an agricultural community development lender providing fair financing, business education, and land access assistance to farmers, ranchers, and fishers who have limited access to financial resources. Many of the clients we have served over the past 25 years would be considered priority producers in the task force report. First, I'd like to thank the work of the task force and council for prioritizing the important issue of agricultural land equity. We at FarmLink hear all the time from young and beginning farmers who struggle with finding and affording land. This challenge is not uniform. It disproportionately affects those historically excluded from land ownership, wealth building, and secure tenure. At the same time, the current agricultural workforce across the state is aging, with over 42% of farmers now exceeding 65 years old. As traditional generational farm transfers decline, we face a critical need to cultivate a new and increasingly diverse generation of farmers. This is essential to secure the future food supply for California and the nation, and to sustain economic opportunity in California ag. This crisis is intensified by several factors: the consolidation of land and water rights, and increased investment in agricultural land by institutional investors and private equity firms. A stark statistic highlights this issue. Just 4.6% of landowners collectively control nearly half of California's total cropland. California must act with urgency to address the agricultural land equity crisis. We have been presented with a strong set of solutions. Now it is time for us to leverage the power of the task force to collaborate and execute these recommendations to secure the food system for all California families. In conclusion, we urge the Council to utilize your full legal authority to act on these recommendations to foster agricultural land equity across the state. We also ask the Council to use the extensive research, community outreach, and findings of this report to educate your colleagues, the governor, policymakers, and the public about this urgent and complex issue. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's hear from Maria Navarro. Please raise your hand.
All right, thank you so much.
Great, thank
Hi,
you.
everyone. My name is Maria Navarro, and I'm a policy advocate for an organization called CAUSE. We're here with a coalition actually called MILPA, and it's a coalition of nonprofit organizations and community members. And together as a coalition, we're trying to establish a self-sustaining farm worker co-op in Ventura County. As y'all know, Ventura County is one of the most major agricultural areas in California. And one of the things I want to just share with y'all, I want to uplift Veronica's earlier comment, where she talked about really the need for these recommendations to come forward, is to get into a position where farmers and people who steward the land are able to be dignified, right? And I think that is part of what we try to do. We work with farm workers every single day. And part of the reason why we're here is because we value integrity into farm worker work. And we've been following the recommendations that have been enumerated in the report presented to you all today, which are instrumental for the creation of self-sustaining co-ops. And again, going back to integrity, equity, a lot of the barriers that we face when making a co-op, and not only us, but anyone who's really wanting to start a co-op in California, are founded on systemic inequities and disadvantages. So with this, I urge you, this council, to review and implement the recommendations you have authority to act on, and which may not need in legislation, right? And as well, I do want to say, this is a major opportunity, and I think the time to act is now. MILPA is really looking forward to seeing what comes out of these recommendations. And lastly, we thank you. We thank staff and the members of the task force for doing this. So thank you, and let's not have these recommendations just sit on a shelf.
Thank you. We'll hear next from Temu Asir Martin Bey. If you can raise your hand in the Zoom or press *9 on the phone.
Peace, hello. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So, good afternoon, everyone, to the chairman, to the council members. Peace and blessings to everyone who gathered here today. Much respect to all of the voices and all the people who've been actively involved in this work for so long. Well, I'm Temu Asir Martin Bey. I'm the president of Osiris Bridge, and I really just rise a strong in report of this agricultural land equity task force recommendation. Much respect to them and everyone involved. I want to really start by acknowledging the significance of what this report represents. It stands as an official accounting of how land access in California has long been shaped by displacement, exclusion, and systemic obstacles, and it charts a clear course forward. It defines agricultural land equity as the condition where priority producers and tribal land stewards can access viable land securely, affordably, free from structural barriers, disparities, and exploitation. And that is not a vague aspiration. That is, I think it's a mandate. This work isn't like anything that has been done anywhere else in the country, not simply because it identifies the problem, which we all know and we all live, but because it lays out statewide framework connecting land access to stewardship, food system strength, and the long-term well-being for our communities, for sure. This recommendations address tribal land return, land acquisition, preventing consolidation, urban ag, which is really one of my favorites. And for many of us, urban ag is really just a doorway into any kind of meaningful relationship with the land. That's really how I started into any kind of advocacy or community organizing. Simply volunteering at the Compton Community Garden many years ago grew into what became a national movement. So I've seen firsthand how barriers to land access and land tenure can create scarcity and create survival mode, but also how urban ag can really, it could change the entire community. So also want to reinforce something very critical that has been said many times, that implementation of this does not have to wait. Many of these recommendations do not solely depend on new legislation. They kind of depend on administrative will, how programs are designed, how funding criteria are established, and how agencies build authentic partnerships with communities. So this report is clear that progress must be shaped and driven by people, the very people who are doing this work, and who this work is meant to serve. That means the work can begin right now, today, right now. And I also want to also second the education around this, outreach around this must be really understood as a form of implementation as well. SGC staff have an opportunity to bring these recommendations and materials to consistent communication, ensuring this becomes a living framework rather than a report that just sitting around gathering dust that we talk about, in the future.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Apologies for interrupting. Thank you so much for your comment. let's return to Berta Magaña, see if she's able to answer. Berta, si usted me oye, por favor, presione estrella 9 y después estrella 6. O si están en Zoom, que se levante la mano. No. Ay, qué lástima. Bueno, para la próxima, señora Magaña. So we hope to connect with Señora Magaña another time. We do have one more request for an in-person comment here, and then that should conclude our public comments on this item. So Ki Zhou, apologies, please correct me.
My name is Chi Zhou. I am one of the task force members. I just wanted to express my deeply gratitude for being in California. I did my PhD in South Carolina for 5 years, and during that 5 years, I always know if I wanted to settle down in the United States, I wanted to go to California because of all the Asian foods. But now, serving on this task force for 2.5 years, it makes me feel more and more proud, and I appreciate that I'm in California. I have been forcing myself to listening the news of the United States to practice my English, and all those the news happening in the nationwide make me concerned. But then look at here, California, that we are doing this type of work. We have a government that really cares about equity and diversity, and I'm really proud of that. And the whole task force meeting for the last 2.5 years, we spent so many listening sessions, and we had surveys and we have task force meetings all translated into different languages. And I wanted to shout out for this, a lot of work to put into this, and the 175 Asian farmers in the Central Coast of California. They have never had this experience before, and they feel that their voice being heard, and and I wanted to show the appreciation for this important work. Thank you.
Thank you, Chi. So that concludes our public comment period for this item.
Great. Thank you to all from the public who made comments and feedback. Really appreciate that. So now we move to item number 10, which is an action item for the Agricultural Land Equity Task Force membership. I'll now pass it back to Camille.
Thank you, Chair Acefa. So as you all heard and was acknowledged, in addition with the public comment, the task force members have done an extraordinary amount of work to deliver this report to the governor and legislature, and it is here in front of you today. So in recognition of that work, there is a resolution before you that would, having met the obligation to submit this report by that January 1st deadline, to conclude the appointments of the members of the California Agricultural Land Equity Task Force. So I pass that back to you, Chair Acefa.
Great, thanks, Camille. Justin, after a quick reminder, we'll jump into our council.
Yes. So if members of the public would like to comment on this item, please submit a public comment card at the side table. To make virtual public comment, please visit sgc.ca.gov/meetings-events/council and complete the public comment form.
Great, thanks. I'll now initiate council discussion, but I want to echo again some of the thank yous to the task force. It's been said again and again, 2 years, but some of the stats are amazing. 12 counties that you went out to, 20 plus farms that you visited, 400 individuals you met, to the task force member, last person's point that she was making, with multilingual engagement and all the one-on-ones with tribal groups that you've done. So it is clear that the incredible amount of groundwork that you have done, and also obviously reflected on the work and the recommendation at the end. So again, thank you for the time you dedicated to this. I just want to warn you that Bagley Keene would apply even for a year after you leave. No. With that, I'll open it to public comments. Secretary Johnson.
Thank you, Chair. I want to make the motion not as a ending, but as an appreciation for the work that you all did in this work. Talk about reach. Don't we all hope that task force actually reach community in terms of the input? So clearly, you all and appreciated hearing that. So the reach was incredible. So thank you for engaging community real authentically, in the work that you did going forward. And so I make the motion of this adoption of this action in recognition of a job well done with completed on time. I mean, so I would say maybe your transition in this task force concludes. Maybe you need to come take some seats up here. Then you'll really get to enjoy the Bagley Keene in various components that you have. But I say that, but I say it meaningfully, right? Always at the top of the org chart in California's state government and in our nation are the people. And so just I really appreciate that the work that we do, no matter where it is in the reach of this council or the work more broadly, that we are always centering the people. And I think that's a lot of what your recommendations say, in the recommendations, in the way in which we strengthen the California's beauty and diversity and all that we have. So with that, that's a long motion, Chair, but that is my motion.
Thank you for that motion, Secretary Johnson. Is there a second to the long motion here?
With gratitude, I would second the motion.
So Deputy Secretary Jameson seconds the motion. With that, is there any discussion?
Yeah.
Appreciation.
Noting the appreciation expressed. I see no public comment on this item. As follow-up to the previous item, I think appreciation has come from the public as well. So I'll take the roll call here. Chair Acefa?
Enthusiastically, yes.
Enthusiastic, yes. Vice Chair Cardenas?
Yes.
Yes. Deputy Secretary Kurgan?
Yes.
Yes. Secretary Johnson?
Aye.
Deputy Secretary Jameson?
Yes.
Deputy Secretary Eisent?
Aye.
Senior Housing Policy Coordinator Jackson?
Aye.
And Deputy Secretary Schwartz?
Aye.
All right, then the motion passes.
Great. Thank you again, and thank you to SGC staff as well. Absolutely. Now we'll take our last item on the agenda, which is a public comment for matters not on the agenda. Unfortunately, this is not a forum for dialogue with the council members, but questions posed by the public during this item cannot be substantively addressed or discussed at this meeting. Any required follow-up can be directed to SGC Executive Director Aaron Curtis for follow-up answers and connections to relevant staff. So with that, Justin?
The only public comment we had registered was from Ms. Magana, who we've not been able to get in contact with. So there's no public comment at this time.
That now brings us to the end. Again, I want to thank you, the public, certainly SGC staff, and some incredible support, Justin, as well as a number of staff who did amazing work. Lisa Dong, Justin Massey, Caleb Swanson, Sarah Bauer, Alex Kroll, Fabian Perez-Gove, Mahima Ali. Thank you, you guys. You're the backbone for all of this work. So well appreciated. So with that, this meeting is adjourned.
And if the task force members could please hang back just for a bit. We have some certificates of appreciation. We'd love to get a photo as well. Thank you.
Here.
Thank you all.
Yeah, that was great. Thank you for staying. Yeah.
Good job.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for, I'm sorry about that. I'm sorry about that. Oh, thank you.